He wants it. He needs to get the resolution.
Good evening. I'm on Zoom already.
That's the lowest price ever. And remember, my slippers have 4 layers design. These layers combine to give you comfort and support.
can we tell where that audio is coming from?
I just muted it.
Well, it's 7:30. Looks like we've got a good crowd tonight, so we'll get started. Welcome to the April 6th, 2022 Town of Ossining Planning Board. And before we go around introductions, it's my pleasure to announce that we have two new members of the board. Manny is our new regular board member. Welcome, Manny. And Jason Mencher, if I'm pronouncing that right, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, is our new alternate. So welcome. I will go around the Zoom screen and people can introduce themselves. Let's start
Gareth, I'm sorry, excuse me, before you start, you may just want to announce that if you're not a planning board member or a consultant, please turn off the video cameras.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a little confusing.
Okay. You heard her. Turn off your video cameras, please. Yeah. Great. So, Sam, you want to start with introduce yourself? You're muted.
Oh,
Sandy
sorry. Kathy Zalantis.
Nellie, secretary.
Sandy,
You're muted, Gareth.
Sandy, could you start again?
You're muted, Sandy.
Okay, good.
Sandy and Nellie, secretary.
Thank you. Kathy, again.
Kathy Zalantis, planning board attorney.
Jim,
Jim Lacinas, planning board member.
Jason, Donna,
Donna Sharrett, planning board member.
Manny,
Hi, Manny Vikas. I'm the newest member of the board, and I'm also an architect.
Valerie,
Valerie Menastra, town planner.
Dan,
James Garcia, consulting engineer of the planning board.
and so many people here, it's hard to pick out. Okay, I think maybe that's it. Who did I miss? If
You
not,
got it.
we got it. Okay, thank you very much. And yeah, actually, I should have mentioned when announcing Jason and Manny. Manny is an architect. We're very pleased. And Jason Mencher is an attorney and a planner. So again, thank you both for joining and welcome. So the first item on the agenda tonight is the MGM subdivision at 5 Hawks Avenue. This is a continuation of the public hearing. Is the applicant here?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, Tom, welcome. Where do we stand?
Just to introduce myself, Tom Kerrigan, the engineer for the project. Since the last meeting, we took the board's comments to note, and we revised the landscape plan to address them. We understand, though, that during the ARB review, the landscape plans are subject to change as well. So we understand and accept that. We received earlier this week a copy of the resolution for the project. We have reviewed it. We find no objections to it, and we're ready to move forward.
Thank you. Comments from the consultants, Valerie?
I don't have any comments remaining on this particular application. The board received the copy of the draft resolution, which incorporated all of your conditions, specific conditions at the last meeting.
Kathy, anything?
Nothing.
Dan?
I guess I just had one thing I wanted to clarify. I guess this project originally, prior to this last go around, was 3 lots. So the language in the subdivision approving resolution mentions that there's 2 new building lots. Is that correct? Because there's a house and, so there's really 1 new building lot.
Valerie, you want to address that?
So I took the original resolution from the original subdivision. So has the overall subdivision changed? I thought there was still going to be 2 new lots created as a result of the subdivision.
It's going from 1 lot with a building on it to 2 lots with 2 buildings on it. So I guess it depends on, how if you see the transformation of the 1 lot to 2 lots as the creation of 2 lots versus the creation of 1 additional lot. I don't know what the language would prescribe, but that's, that's how I had read it.
So I'm going to defer to Kathy to just take a look at the resolution and see if she wants this to be amended, or if it should stay as is written.
Sorry, I missed that. Could you say that again? I was on the phone. Sorry, we're having trouble with a link.
So this is how it was last time, right, Valerie? This is exactly the language that we used last time. So I'm not sure why we would want to change it. It hasn't changed since the last. It's still the.
I guess
the existing lot was considered 1 lot.
Right, so there's 1 new lot. In essence, you're calculating your impact fees on your impact. So there's a house there already, so there's really just 1 new lot.
So the resolution specifically states to subdivide the subject property into 2 building lots. So I think that's how, it's up to the board if that needs to be further clarified into 2 building lots, of which 1 is already developed.
There must be a standard way to handle that semantic.
I know that a lot of the conditions, specifically, like, for example, when it's condition, one of the terminations, number 1, the proposed subdivision with proposed 2 new residential lots would benefit. So a lot of these conditions were taken directly from the original resolution. So if the board wants to amend it, I think we probably need I think we'll have to look at it and amend the language for all the different conditions and then bring it back to the board.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to just make a decision on the fly because it's changing everything in the resolution, how it's drafted.
Well, we want Kathy and Valerie to be satisfied with it, but Valerie, you think it's clear as it stands, right?
Well, again, that's why I defer to Kathy, since attorney, so that, clearly, ultimately, this is something that would have to stand up in the courts, but I took the language directly from the original subdivision approval, since this is basically a reapproval of the initial subdivision application.
So, I mean,
Right, and the whole premise of the application was nothing changed. So if we reduced a lot, I'm not understanding why anything would be different in this resolution. Like
Or just
if a
the
lot
number of new lots.
reduced,
The old subdivision had 2 new lots, this only has 1.
yeah, but isn't that the one that we last approved was this exact same subdivision? Not the original before that, but the most
Right.
recent
I'm
subdivision
going back to
approved.
the 3 lot.
this language might date back to the original.
So I think we're gonna have to look at it and verify one way or the other. If this is part of the original 3-lot subdivision or the amended 2-lot subdivision.
If Kathy and Valerie, if this is the only issue we have, could we take a vote on approving this resolution contingent upon those changes, given that it's kind of a semantic language issue?
I mean, I think it's more than a semantic language issue. It's either, because it's, like Dan said, it's the impacts from either 2 new lots or 1 new lot, and rec fees on 2 lots versus 1 lot. So,
Okay, all right. I just didn't want to hold it up any further. All right, let's go. Any other comments from the consultants on this right now? If
I
not,
mean, Tom, did you have a chance to look at the draft resolution?
Yeah, I did. And the conditions of it seemed fine to me, but now that you're bringing this up, that hadn't occurred to me that would that distinction would need to be made. I just kind of had read it to mean that the end result is 2 lots, not considering all the implications of that.
So the resolution that I was referring to was one that was adopted in 2019.
Right, and it is effectively the same project from that resolution. But yeah, I guess it's the question of and I guess it should be right. How it is accurately described as it is is it 2 new lots or a lot line change to 1 or a creation of 1 or it's not a lot line change. But yeah, it should, the description of the actual subdivision should be, I guess, adequately or accurately described. And I don't know what the legal exact definition would be for this.
So essentially, you're saying that there's an existing house and 1 new lot, not 2 new lots.
Well,
The original proposal was to add 2 new lots to the to subdivide the property from the existing 1 into 3.
Right.
And we ended up
With a total of 2.
with a total of 2.
That was the most recent one in 2019.
Yes.
right.
And it says 2 building lots. But the issue is that there's an existing house already, so really there's only I'm not totally sure why the language doesn't work, because it says 2 building lots. I mean, we just need to specify that there's an existing house on 1 lot. Does that do it? I mean, is the existing house shown on the subdivision plat?
Well, the existing house is being removed.
Okay, so then it is 2 building lots.
Right, so then you are building 2, right?
So,
Because then there's 2 new buildings going up.
Well,
I would hope, I took a quick look at the code. I thought it would be clear in the code how to interpret that. In a lot of other jurisdictions, it's the new lots you create becomes the basis for any impact fees.
Right. I mean, it strikes me that, you had one lot and it's now being divided into two. So you're really only adding one building lot. The fact that you're taking it down the other house really should not matter.
Right, I guess where this would really, one of the ways where it would come into effect would be condition 5, which is the recreation fees. The way it's worded is that it would, for 2 additional homes where I guess there is one existing home and then that'll be removed, and then a new home and an additional home. And I guess I'm not sure how that exactly would be, how the code classifies that. But I don't know where else it would really pop up.
So then okay, so my question would be to whoever, Valerie, Kathy, Dan, if you had a house and you tore it down and you built a new house, would you have to put in new rec fees?
No, because you'd have an existing lot.
Right. So here there's an existing lot. They're just creating a second lot from it. So in theory, you would just add, it would just be one lot that's being added.
So I think we could leave the language the way it is, if I'm hearing everyone correctly, and just provide that the rec fee would be for one lot. Does that do it?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not.
If we're referencing this site plan, it's not unclear. We're going from 1 lot to 2.
Right, that's, yeah,
So you're adding one lot. You had one lot to start with.
yeah, correct.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's fine. We can,
Yeah,
I can amend the resolution if the board would like to acknowledge that it's only, the recreation fee should only be applied to one lot.
Yes.
Works for me. Kathy, you're
I would prefer that. I would like to keep this resolution's language in line with the resolution that was essentially the identical resolution that was passed in 2019. This is essentially the same thing. So I think the closer we keep it to the language that was, and if we just need to put that clarification as to the rec fee being for one lot, I think that's fine.
Okay.
In that case, let me ask my question again. If there are no other issues, could we make that change? Could we vote, theoretically vote to approve this resolution contingent upon that change?
As modified.
As modified, or would you want us next meeting?
No, that's fine. That's only one condition.
Okay. All right, good. Are there any other comments from the board members?
So I have a couple comments. The original resolution did state that there shouldn't be any monocultures of rows of monoculture trees, and that there's definitely that. So have we decided that the exact plant species and should be determined in the ARB review, and we'll just leave this go? Because I would definitely not, I would vote not to approve this project based on this planting plan. You have 8. They took away the sugar maples, but they've got 8 of the same kind of oaks, like lining a driveway. And
so Donna, condition 9 9C indicates that the landscape plan would need to be submitted and approved by the ARB.
Okay.
After the fact. So I think
Okay.
you would be able to get to review this again.
Right, so that's because this is considering the tree bank fund, because you're meeting that requirement. So just from my understanding, like say we would just have to, at the ARB, we just have to make sure the same amount of trees are here, because that's meeting the tree bank fund. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
Right, so I have in the resolution specifically dealing with landscaping. We
So
have landscape plan must be submitted and approved by
ARB?
approved at the Architectural Review
Excellent.
Board. And we also have in there that the applicant must provide to the satisfaction of the building department that the final plat meets the requirements of section 183-12G of the tree protection chapter of the town code. That's prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy. So if you recall, we were going to have them submit a landscape plan as part of the ARB review, and prior to the issuance of a building permit, and then prior to a CO that they need to demonstrate that they met the tree protection chapter.
Perfect. That's it for me.
Carolyn, anything on this one? Anything further?
No.
Okay. If there are no further comments, I think we could entertain a motion to approve this resolution, contingent upon that modification discussed. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Sorry.
Okay. Anna, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Manny?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Have a good night.
Good night. Moving on to the second item, the Pacucci subdivision at 51 Dam Road. Is the applicant here?
Yes, Ralph Mastromonaco representing the applicant.
Hello, Ralph.
Good evening.
Would you like to start us off, give us an update?
What I'd like to do is try sharing my screen. If I can do this, not sure. Is that visible?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, if you can hear me. The applicants own approximately 2 acres off of Croton Dam Road. There are 2 buildings on the property at the moment, in light of our previous discussion. The applicant is proposing 1 new home. It's called Lot 2. Each of the lots, the minimum lot size in the zone is 15,000 square feet. The new lot would be twice that. The other lots are well in excess of the 15,000 square feet. We are proposing a private road. There's an existing driveway serving the 2 existing homes. We are converting that into a private road. It's the right of way there would be 50 feet wide, and the private road would be 20 feet wide in accordance with the town building inspector's recommendations that we received last month. What you're seeing is merely the subdivision at the moment. We haven't addressed any ARB issues right now, but we are showing the actual proposed house. This is a house that Mr. Pacucci has been working with his architect on, and it's really is to show in general how that would look. All of the 3 homes will be served by public water and public sewer. This obviously has to go to the health department for approval after your preliminary approval. And I realize there are some new members or alternates on the planning board. I'm not sure how much, they may have additional questions, but I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. And I believe this is a public hearing. And I would ask the chairman to open the public hearing and invite any comments.
I can do that. I think the public hearing is open from last time. It's just continued. Well, first, before asking for comments from the public, are there any comments from the consultants?
So I had a few comments on the letter that I provided. A couple things, basically the street design, the applicant should get final confirmation from the building inspector in terms of the road width and the road design. We do note a couple of some additional information that we requested last time that we're still waiting for, dealing with the sewer and water facilities, stormwater management agreements, also information on, at some point, this board's gonna have to make findings dealing with the parks and playgrounds, basically your rec fees, how this particular application would adhere to chapter 183, the tree protection. We noted that there are a number of easements on this property, and those particular easements should be provided to the town attorney, so for her review, in terms of how those would or would not affect the proposed subdivision. And then also dealing with the existing garage. We noticed that, we had some concerns with the access to proposed lot 1, and we wanted some clarification on that as well.
If I may respond quickly.
Yes.
In terms of the road width, we actually did get a confirmation that I believe was read at the last planning board meeting that the 20-foot meets the requirements that the building inspector had referenced. And I believe that was in writing. It might have been an email or whatever, but I believe it was read to the board at the last meeting. In terms of the easements, we aren't, the easements that exist are, the easements that you see on the plan are existing easements. We're not changing any of those. Those are just, they've been there from the original subdivision. So I don't know that they would have any effect on lot 2. And if there were other comments, I don't recall ever seeing in writing something that we could respond to. Just listening to the comments, I think they're easily responded to, but I don't think we were given an opportunity prior to this meeting to actually respond in writing. So if there's some sort of document referencing the subdivision with comments, we would like to see that.
Sure, I believe Sandy sent them to you. If you have not received them, I'm sure she'll send that along. And I think John's last response from last month was that his preliminary assessment thought the new road width looked good, but he still needed to look at the details a little bit more. So we're just recommending that you get final confirmation from the building inspector.
Happy to do it.
Are there other comments from Kathy or Dan?
I just, I guess by just way of clarification, I just wanted to know what the rationale was for where the widened road terminates. So it looks like it appears to terminate by the boundary between lot 1 and 2. And I was wondering why it doesn't sort of continue to the, let's see, like, oh yeah, I see where the existing driveway is for lot 1.
Yes, Dan, I can respond to that. It's actually very simple. In the fire code, there's a limitation on the number of lots that have to be served by a 20-foot road. So as soon as we get to only 2 lots, it does not have to be 20 feet any longer. But for 3 lots, it has to be 20 feet. And this was submitted to the building inspector.
Okay, no, because I was just wondering, because then following that rationale, then why doesn't it drop off at the first driveway? It seems like,
we could have.
It seems like an odd place that it should either end at the first driveway or at the second, and it kind of ends in between.
Because the code doesn't specify driveways, it talks about houses. So we went to the point at which there are only 2 houses.
But the whole road is servicing those 3 lots. I'm not seeing your logic, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like it should, to access the other lot, it really should go to the driveway, it would seem, of lot one.
Well, that would be less of, yes, that we could have done that, but the way we read the code along with the building inspector was that it didn't go by driveways, it went by houses.
Well, the private road services 3 lots, that's true, and the road needs to be a certain width. I don't see how coming up with, once you get to a certain clearance, you get to diminish it.
This has come up on, this has come up on other projects. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, I think John Hamilton, the building inspector, really ought to weigh in on it. I'm just trying to look at this and logically, to try and wrap my arms around why it ends where it ends. I hear what you're saying, Ralph, but I ultimately it's the building inspector, but I just wanted to understand how we got here.
Yes, and if the problem is when you read the fire code, this is how you conform to the fire code. Whether it makes sense or not is a whole other story. But this is how it's actually technically written, and this is technically how we believe you would have to conform to the fire code.
Oh, I guess in following Jim's comment, is there a problem with extending it? The way Jim's reading it. In other words, is there a problem of keeping the width a little further, as Jim has suggested?
There's no problem doing it. It's just extra disturbance. If you don't have to rip up that area, why do it? It doesn't gain anything.
All right.
So I think we're leaving that one determination from John Hamilton on that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Other comments from the consultants on this?
Just wanted to add that I concur with the number 6 in Valerie's memo. I would like to see, once this issue is resolved, but I think it would make sense to see the agreement that's going to control so that there's no issues with maintenance of this private road.
Yes, we can provide that. That's not a problem.
And also it would be helpful, I believe, to see the water and sewer easements, or at least get an explanation of the existing easements, because we need to understand whether they're changing in any way the lot 2. If they're not, just give an explanation, even a narrative of, I would like to see the actual easements.
The easements, we can provide you with the original filed map when these were divided into 2 lots. And that's where those easements originated from.
Okay. Do you have easement documents that are filed?
I'm sorry.
Like, do you have separate easement agreements that are filed, or are they just referenced on a subdivision plat? Is it just easements referenced on a subdivision plat, or are there controlling agreements?
I don't know what the board required at the time. This was many years ago. I couldn't tell you offhand, but the easements are on the filed map.
I may have missed it, but is there a written agreement regarding the maintenance and so forth of the private road distributed between the 3 properties?
How I mentioned that earlier was that we would supply a common road easement and maintenance and easement agreement. We will provide that for the board. It would, our attorney would have to provide that, but it's essentially sort of a boilerplate document. We'll be happy to provide that.
Are there any other comments from the consultants? Not comments from the board?
I have a few comments. So Valerie had mentioned something about the existing garage. And it is really strange the way it's sort of that point comes out into the road. So, but I don't know what would the right thing be for that. But that I would be interested in. It just seems like it's going to be awkward to get around, and it's just kind of a strange looking thing there. The other comment I have, which really depends on Dan's review, but I would just like to comment, I am really uncomfortable with that rain garden. It seems to be taking every bit of water from the new impervious surfaces. So it's that big driveway and the big house, everything's going into this one rain garden, which is a fraction of the size of those impervious surfaces. It just seems to me that it would be so much more practical to have water from the house going into one place and water from the driveway going into another, particularly with this rain garden when it overflows, which I guess.
Somebody dropped out.
Okay, we lost you, Donna. You're frozen.
Oops, sorry, am I back?
You're back.
Yeah, okay, so I'm worried about the volume of water that's gonna come down. I really think it should go into different places.
If I don't know if you're frozen again.
I am, it's
Yeah.
terrible.
All right. Well, the
Yeah,
purpose
so
of,
I want to listen, I want to, Dan, I look forward to Dan's review of that, but I'm very concerned about it.
well, the purpose of the rain garden was to take the impervious area of the house and the driveway, but not the main road. And that was the whole.
No, I'm saying the driveway, look at all that space. It's a huge impervious area. I have a house that's much, much smaller than this house. I have 4 gutters and it goes, oops. Oh my God. Am I back? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we
I don't
never.
know why I keep going out. I think that it's too much for that little rain garden.
Obviously, we're gonna review it, Donna.
Yeah,
The
I
consultant
know
plan-
that. So
provide
I
us with
just
all the
want you to know
counts.
that I'm worried about it.
And
Thank
probably the other thing you may have to look at on this, Ralph, too, is maybe we can pick up a little bit with your grasscrete to put a deeper stone base under there to try add a little bit more of mitigation for that widening.
Yes. Yes. That's no
Okay,
problem.
that's it for me.
Yeah. Well,
Except that there is no tree plan and all that stuff. It seems like it's out of, whenever we're looking at plans, we have a lot more to look at than this. So,
well, at the last meeting, what we did show you, I could probably resurface that here, but at the last planning board meeting, we showed you the current vegetation. If you'd like to see that now, I could do it again.
but that wasn't an inventory. I think it's, it just
Well,
was
as
like
we
a
just-
drawing of where plants are, so it doesn't
Yes.
really, yeah,
It-
so.
Basically,
And then you said there might be a tree coming down, so that hasn't been
yes,
indicated.
yes.
So
there
that
was-
just needs to be, and I think Valerie indicated that on her note, so.
Right. Well, I think without bringing that drawing back up, which might take me a couple of minutes at this point.
I remember it, yeah.
Yes, essentially, the new house, lot 2, is essentially surrounded by vegetation. Along Croton Dam Road, it's essentially a dense forest. And there's, between the asphalt driveway going to the neighbor, there's also dense vegetation, although it's a little thinner in width. And then there are plantings between lot 1 and lot 2 that they're youthful now, but they would be growing up at some point. But there's also a big difference between the elevation between lot 2 and lot 1. My client owns lot 1 and he owns lot 2. So there has to be, some concern, or I don't think there's a lot of concern on my client's part about separating those two or trying to hide one house from the other, because he owns both houses. But there is a line of bushes along lot 1 and lot 2. And of course, this would come up later at the ARB, when you're doing that review. And at the moment, what we would like to do is really move this along so that we can subdivide the property. And when we need to build a house there, we would certainly be back in front of you for those details.
But the tree bank fund, if there was trees being removed,
One tree.
yeah, that still has to be, we still have to have the information on that, I believe.
That tree was dead, basically. It was half dead. It was removed already. It was only one tree in the corner between lot 1 and 2, I believe.
Is that all, Donna?
Yeah, I just feel like it should have, like there should be some information about that tree. If it's dead, then there should be.
It's gone.
It's gone, so there's no
Gone.
tree.
The tree's gone.
Okay. There's no tree. Okay.
I don't know if there's any more public listening to this application, but if there is no public comment, I would then ask you to close the public hearing, and I would hope that we could try to respond to your comments, but it's up to you. If
We
there were
still
some
have to
written
get the
comments-
information for the stormwater, the rain garden and all that. There's still
Okay.
information.
Yeah, we have a little ways to go still before that. All the that Valerie listed.
Gareth, Mr. Chairman, there's two people that have their hands raised for comment for this public hearing.
Okay, hang on a minute though, because we haven't finished with the comments of the board. Are there any other comments from the board members? Carolyn, Jim, you're both good? Okay.
Then a resolution on the road width, but the building inspector can help us with that before the next meeting.
Okay.
So, Garrett, I just have a question regarding the future houses and all these lots. So when it says the house on the left is on lot 3 is under construction.
No, I'm sorry, that's wrong. That's built now.
Oh, okay. And for all these 2 houses and for the potential third, all the sewer connections are going to be independent per house until it reaches the main, right?
Yes.
Okay, that was my question.
Good question.
Thank you.
And Jason, any question from you? Okay, I think we're good there. So we will take comments and questions from the public. Sandy, do you want to open them up in the order they raised their hands?
Yes, we have someone who's raised their hand. It says retail's phone, but if they could give us their name and address and they could speak. Retail's phone.
Okay, if retail's iPhone is not there, could we go to the second one? Brian?
Yes, the next one is Brian.
Hi, good evening. This is Brian Schenkel. I'm the president of the Country Meadows Homeowners Association Board, and I live on the adjacent lot in 8 Quail Hollow Road. I apologize if this is not the right forum for this, but we noticed relatively recently that the existing 6-foot-high wood fence was erected in the last several months, I believe. And we had some questions from homeowners that are in the lots that border this fence if the property had been staked prior to putting that fence up to know that it wasn't infringing on the common area.
I don't know exactly where you're speaking of. Could you refer to the plan that's on the screen and describe where the fence is? Oh,
Yes, there's an existing 6-foot-high wood fence that's noted with a red dash along the northern end of the property on the northern side of the private road. Yes.
Do you want to comment to that, Ralph?
I actually, I don't actually know about it. It says existing 6-foot-high wood fence. but I'm not sure, you know, how they located it. I don't know whether the surveyor did it or how, you know, how it was located. But it would show up on the survey, on the final plat, that fence would show up, and that can be the determination.
Okay, thank you.
Last call for Retail's iPhone. Still have your hand up? Okay, are there any other members of the public who would like to comment on this application? Do you see any, Sandy? I don't see any on my screen.
I do not. I only see this Retail's iPhone, but maybe they're not sure.
Okay. I would think, Kathy and Valerie, tell me if I'm wrong, we'll keep the public hearing open while these issues are being addressed between Ralph and John Hamilton, and that we should reconvene at the next meeting. Is that correct? That would be April 20th, if
Yes.
Ralph,
If there's some written comments, could Sandy send those over to us tomorrow so we can get right on it?
those written comments
Yes,
came.
I will send them.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, and if there's nothing else from anyone, any final words? Then I guess we'll see you at the next meeting, and
Right.
thank you for coming tonight.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Good night.
Good night. Just a little issue. I neglected to the public on the MGM. Should I do that now, or is it just sort of wrapped into the our approval of the resolution? Kathy, I think that's for you.
Sorry.
A little housekeeping. I did not close the public hearing for MGM and the previous application. Do we need to formally now, or is it just late in the slide?
We did vote to approve the resolution, so we could just indicate that you can take a motion now retroactively to close that public hearing. But you did ask and nobody wanted to speak on that one.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Manny?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So the public MGM closed. Thank you.
And if you just wanted, just for continuity's sake, to vote again after the close of the public hearing to accept the public, to approve the resolution as modified.
Do I have a motion to approve the resolution as
So
modified?
moved.
Second.
Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Manny?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And thank you. And Welcome Homes at 68 Somerstown Road, new single home, architectural review, and this is a public hearing.
Good evening. Yeah, anybody who isn't speaking, could you please put yourself on mute because I'm getting a lot of strange noises. Thanks.
Good evening, Jody Cross from Zarin and Steinmetz. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Please do.
So, good evening again. I'm here on behalf of Welcome Homes. I'm here with Andrew Vaccarello, the civil engineer, Anthony Carino, the VP of Design, and Kate Ryan, Senior Director of Architecture. And I think I saw also, there's a lot of people here, so I think I saw the prospective homeowners also on the Zoom. And we were here at the last meeting to introduce the single family house that we're looking for ARB approval. That will be here at 68 Somerstown Road. And since this is a public hearing, I'll just do a very brief recap. So this property consists of 2 lots. These lots were created pursuant to a subdivision that was approved by resolution in 2016, filed map in 2018. The proposed home would be located on lot 2 or lot 3.2. And it's about 1.3 acres. And as you can see, much of this property is constrained by a pond and wetland buffers. And just so it's clear, the home we're proposing does not encroach into the buffer. It's completely outside the buffer within the building envelope that was approved in the subdivision. And that took some meticulous planning since it is a very, it's a tight building envelope due to all the constraints on the property. The only improvements we're proposing on lot 1 is a stormwater basin. And as you may recall, we discussed this at the last meeting on how these 2 lots get tied together. So we've talked to the prospective owners. They're willing to enter into a condition pre-CO to record against both properties an easement and restrictive covenant, which will tie the use of the properties together, acknowledge that a single family home can't be built here pursuant to the subdivision, even though it's a building lot, and stormwater easement rights. We did provide a draft already of that easement agreement to Kathy, Dan, and Valerie, just so they could see what we're thinking, and hopefully that will satisfy that issue. So regarding the architecture, the home will be about 4,543 square feet. It's a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath house. Again, fully compliant with zoning within the building envelope. We've provided previously photographs of all the homes within 350 feet. And as shown in that exhibit, the surrounding homes are varied in size and in style. This home will be a very high quality construction. It's neither monotonously similar nor strikingly dissimilar from the surrounding homes. We've also, since the last meeting, we supplemented our submission, including to address some of the comments of the boards, including adding the limits of disturbance on the civil plans. We provided a lighting exhibit to discuss the proposed house lighting. And we also provided a comprehensive landscape plan and tree removal inventory. And lastly, we also provided photographs of the existing screening on the site. We are in receipt of the Nelson Pope and Voorhees memo. So I just want to quickly address some of the comments in that memo. The first comment had to do with the stormwater, which I think I've already addressed here, that we will handle it by having an easement and restrictions recorded on both properties to acknowledge the fact that no home will be built on lot 1. And that hopefully will address that issue. The memo also stated that we need to show compliance with chapter 183 of the code, which is the tree ordinance. So we provided a tree inventory. There are 10 trees coming down. The plans do have, it's not on this page, but on one of the other pages, the plans, it does show which trees we're removing. We are removing 10 trees, but planting 22, among other landscaping, which I'll defer to Andrew just to discuss some of the landscaping that we're proposing. I also want to point out that the 2016 resolution approving the subdivision required a 1-to-1 replacement of any trees that are lost or damaged during the construction of the driveway. And here we're proposing more than 2 for 1. But we also understand there's a provision in the tree ordinance that requires replacement of 50% of the aggregate DBH. And I'm not sure that that provision applies here because it specifically states in the tree ordinance that it's for subdivision and site plan applications, and this is an ARB application. But we did go through the exercise of calculating the DBH of the aggregate DBH of the removed trees versus what we're proposing. And of course, we come up 3 inches short. So the applicant is willing to plant 1 additional tree that we could, that could be a condition of approval. And we could talk about if the board wants to see the tree in a particular place. So that would address the 50% issue. The last comment was that Nelson Pope and Voorhees has recommended that the applicant consult with SHPO in light of the proximity to the Robinwood Historic District. So this one we respectfully disagree with. It's important to note that these properties are outside the district. They're not in a historic district. There's nothing in the town code or anything else that requires coordination with SHPO just because we're in close proximity. It seems to just add another layer of time constraints and cost to go through that process of getting SHPO approval. And we submit that with the landscaping that exists, the screening that exists, as well as what's being proposed, there would be a mitigation of any impact if there was any. We also are in receipt of, I don't know if we've received all the letters from the neighbors, but we did receive a handful. And I just want to address some of those up front. A lot of the comments from the neighbors are relating to the subdivision itself or site plan issues. And as this board knows, we're here just for ARB. This subdivision was approved again back in 2016. It's a filed subdivision. There's no site plan review, just ARB review. So, when this subdivision went through this board, it was thoroughly vetted. When a lot of work went into it in the design, the house complies with that subdivision approval. This conservation easement's already been recorded in reliance on that subdivision approval. But we do just want to address the concerns because we want to be good neighbors. So a lot of the comments pertain to this driveway that again was approved in the subdivision. There were comments about it being very long and very narrow. Want to point out that the 2016 resolution actually requires that any house built on these lots be built with sprinklers. And we are going to be building this one house with sprinklers. And that should address any of the emergency concerns. And as this board is probably well aware, that's a rare condition to see for a single family house. So I tried to go back to the minutes to see what the discussions were, but one can assume that that was to address the potential concerns about the long driveway. There were also concerns raised about how wet the property is, which obviously we know. It definitely is a wet property, and that's why we have this restrictive covenant here and the wetland buffers, and we were very careful to stay outside of that buffer. We think it's best to stay out of the buffer rather than have any encroachments. In addition, there were comments about where the house is sited and the size of the house, all of which are really irrelevant here because again, it complies with zoning. And there was reference to a house previously being approved that was smaller. And frankly, that doesn't bind us to anything. This is a new applicant, a new home. And as long as we're zoning compliant respectfully, that's what this board should consider. We submit that this application does show that there's substantial and adequate screening and landscaping being proposed and existing. It's not monotonously similar or strikingly dissimilar for any of the varied homes in the neighborhood. We would ask that this board would, after the hearing, close the hearing and direct a resolution to be drafted. But I want to also defer to Andrew to discuss some of the landscaping that has been designed for this project and what we would be adding. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Andrew, I'm going to ask you if you could bring up the plans.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Jody. All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen.
Can you zoom in a bit?
Is it, see it, but it's small. If you can zoom in, right?
How's that?
It's better.
All right, great. So again, my name is Andrew Vaccarello. I'm a civil engineer with Welcome Homes. And I just want to present briefly the proposed landscaping plan that we're proposing on the property. So the last meeting, we had a number of comments from the board about trying to make sure that we are increasing the resource value and also increasing the screening with the neighboring properties. And that was really one of the main focuses with the landscaping plan we're proposing here. So really to maximize the diversity across the different areas, the landscape plan is proposing screening to the north and south of the home. There's multiple districts within the planting areas with different species that were chosen basically in conjunction with where sun exposure is, available space, screening requirements, and like the wildlife habitat and things like that. I want to note that there is a naturalized woodland edge and screening planting zone to the south side of the site, and that's going to remain pretty densely shaded. We are proposing some additional screening along that southern side of the property, and that is consisting of a number of shade trees. Additionally, there's a naturalized woodland edge on the northern side of the site too, just north of the home placement. And that is going to be, the landscaping there is going to be increased. We're proposing some additional plantings in that area to increase the screening in that location. The rain garden is being proposed to, and it's using a combination of water-loving native shrubs, flowers, and grasses. And those are going to help naturally filter the runoff that's collected from the roof and the impervious surfaces. And it's going to encourage water filtration in that area, which is going to meet the requirements outlined in the applicable code. And then lastly, the resource value at the pond edge is going to be increased by adding multiple plantings in this area too. So that's going to consist of 0.2 acres of New England conservation wildlife meadow. That's a seed mix, and that is going to definitely increase the resource value of the area and provide some additional filtration before any water would get to the pond. And then I'd also like to note that across the site, there's 22 trees that are being proposed and a total of 91 shrubs that are being proposed. There is a substantial amount of planting that's in the wetland buffer to, again, have the resource value of the property increased with respect to the wetland and adding any filtration before any of the water gets to that pond. And then again, like Jody had mentioned, there's 163 caliper inches of trees that are being removed to accommodate the development. And we are proposing 22 trees to replace that, which sums to about 78.5 caliper inches. So again, we will plan to amend the plan to increase the planting by adding one more tree to fully comply with that requirement. So I don't know if the board has any questions on what the plantings are that are proposed, but if not, I can pass it back over to Jody.
Gareth, I had some questions about the tree removal and tree plantings. Would now be a good time?
Sure.
Great, thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
So as Gareth mentioned, I'm new on the planning board. I did my best to get up to speed. I looked at the Dropbox. There was a letter and various exhibits, and I looked at the tree removal inventory. Are you able to show us, or on this perhaps, where some of those larger trees, specifically there's a 35-inch red maple, are being removed? I know they're all indicated as healthy, and you indicated they have to be removed for purposes of developing the property. I just wasn't able to reconcile exactly where they're coming out, and I'd like to know.
Sure.
Thank you.
This plan has red, they have X's shown over that trees are to be removed. So the one tree that you mentioned, which is a 35-inch tree in caliper, is located right where my cursor is. That's right on the edge of the driveway location. So that will need to be removed to accommodate the development. And then most of the other trees are in the location of where the driveway comes into the remainder of the site. So there are 3 trees in this location. And then further down the driveway, there are additional trees along the proposed driveway along the Flagstaff portion of the site.
Okay, so the ones that are in the actual path of the driveway, that obviously that makes sense. The ones at that little kind of curving juncture that are slightly off the driveway, are they being removed because the root system would be disturbed, or is there another reason? If they're not in the actual footprint of where the driveway goes, I'm just curious why they need to be
That's
removed.
right. So based off our experience, we think that those trees are going to be too close to the proposed driveway. The root system may be damaged and they may be compromised and they may not make it through the construction. So we wanted to make sure that we were planting appropriate replacements for those and just plan for that ahead of time.
But so is it necessary to do a preemptive removal, or you're only doing it insofar as there's an incumbent requirement that you then have to plant trees and you want to make sure you move
No,
buffer them?
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. It is required. The construction activities can be too close to those areas. They are not going to be able to remain with what we're proposing here.
When you say the construction activity is too close, are you talking about clearance for construction vehicles? I guess I'm not understanding.
I'm
I
actually,
apologize. Sure.
yeah, so I'm referring to the area they're going to have to excavate this area to be able to install the driveway, and we're anticipating that would damage the root system for those trees. So that's in answer to your question, the construction activity to install these improvements is what I'm referring to.
Okay, understood. And then if you can just go back to that one larger 35-inch red maple, that one, I guess it's seemingly where the applicant would like to site the driveway. Is there no way to avoid that? Is it interfering with the view, or is it specifically necessary to facilitate construction? Because it's, 35-inch tree. I'm not the expert, but that's probably a pretty old growth tree on that property. Probably adds, some valuable habitat for animals and shielding for both the applicant and the neighbors.
So like Jody mentioned, we spent a lot of time with the exact placement of this home. There was a number of factors that went into the placement, including the building envelope, the wetlands buffer, things of that nature. And this was the best configuration to be able to accommodate all those constraints. And to be frank, the tree is too close to the developed area. As you can see, the driveway comes right up to that area. So we don't see the potential to be able to save that tree to be able to propose this home here.
Because the driveway needs to be that width at that location?
Just the way that the house is situated and the way that the driveway needs to come into the site, that we are not able to keep that tree.
Thank you for answering my questions. I wish there was a way to avoid that. But I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Are there comments by the consultants?
So I just wanted to follow up on the comments from Jody in terms of the SHPO review. So let me just give you a little background. I recognize it is not required to have that SHPO review, which is why my memo specifically says it's recommended. The concern, we did receive a number of public comments concerning the architecture and the massing of the building, massing of the home compared to the historic district. And so the thought was that, one option that the board could consider is asking for a consultation with SHPO for them to review the proposed building versus the historic district. Another option, again, part of this is to make sure that, the proposed building might not even have any sort of visual impacts on the particular historic district. And of which, if the applicant wants to provide some additional documentation to satisfy that and to make sure that the public is, understanding the fact that there won't be any visual impacts associated with this project, that's also another option as well. So there's a couple different options. I was just raising that because it is something that the public raised. And it is true that the property is contiguous to the historic district. And while I do agree that there's probably not going to be a visual impact due to the distance, it's, just documenting that and verifying that is what I was really the intent of my comment.
My view on that would be that having SHPO weigh in on it is probably the easiest and cleanest and most thorough way to address this. So that's what I would support if the rest of the board would. Any other comments, Valerie, for now?
No, that's it. I think Jody dealt with the rest of my comments and answered them sufficiently.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could address that, what we would ask is that coordination with SHPO be a condition and not hold up any approval of this house. We would be willing to do that consultation, but I don't know what their time frame is. So if it could be a pre-building permit condition, and obviously in the unlikely event that SHPO does have concerns, we would have to come back to the board.
I mean, I'd be okay with that if Valerie and Kathy are.
That would be fine with me.
Okay. Kathy, any comments? And if you don't mind, I might be useful for the public to hear the difference between the planning board's earlier designation of the or approval of the site plan and what is now before us purely as an architectural review board. And I only ask for your clarification of those differences because many of the letters that came in really addressed issues having to do with site plan approval, which is no longer before the board. Do you want to?
Yeah, I would just say that I understand the confusion because this board often wears different hats. But in this case, the planning board, previously granted subdivision approval, previously granted a wetlands permit. So the issues that are being raised are really outside, some of the issues being raised are outside of the scope of this board's purview because this board currently is just sitting as the architectural review board. So even though it's still made up of the same members, it has a different role than the planning board. And I mean, you did hear from the applicant and part of the inquiry that this board takes is whether, it's looking, whether it's in harmony with the surrounding homes, or would they be visually offensive or inappropriate, or the quality of designs. If it's too similar or dissimilar, those are the types of standards that this board looks at as the ARB. So really the issue of the wetlands, that's been addressed, resolved, and permits have been issued with respect to that. Also, I want to note that the applicant, in reliance upon the subdivision approval, entered into a conservation easement. So the applicant has, I mean, not this particular applicant who's here before the ARB, but as the subdivision applicant, acted in reliance upon that to the applicant's detriment. And if not for that subdivision application that was granted, there wouldn't be the conservation easement. So that was a different stage of the process than we're at right now. And I want the public and the board to understand that the focus of this approval is solely ARB.
Any other comments, Kathy, on this application now at this time?
No.
Dan, do you have thoughts on any remaining?
Yeah, no, as Kathy stated, a lot of this was looked at during the subdivision process. So we'll just be looking at this particular application in terms of the amount of stormwater runoff and the facilities they're proposing to mitigate that.
Thank you. Comments from the board?
I have one further comment, and I'll acknowledge that I wasn't around at the time of the site plan approval.
Sorry, Jason, you could hold it. Donna started.
Oh, that's, yeah, okay. So as far as the historic home goes, I feel like that it's not in that district. And when I looked at that district, there are a few homes that aren't in that style, on that street on Devana Road. So this house if it was to be, if you were holding this house to the standard of the majority of the houses, it's not to the standard of all the houses. And I don't know, I think that's too restrictive to tell somebody they have to build a mid-century 50th, mid 20th century home on a new lot.
So you wouldn't, that's not typically when SHPO does look at the historic district, it's really not asking the applicant to adhere to any sort of historic guidelines or anything, because they're not within a historic district, nor is there any regulations for it. It really just focuses on whether, for example, there are visual impacts associated with, so let's just say it was a 100-story building that was going up right next to the historic district. SHPO would say, okay, maybe there's going to be visual impacts associated with the new building versus the historic district. So it's really just a matter of, there was concerns about the visual impacts from Savannah Road with the new building. And so that was, again, it's completely up to the board, but that was just my suggestion as one way to handle those comments.
No, I appreciate that. Is there any way everybody could turn off their video, like that's not on the board and that's not speaking? I just have such a problem with the stability of this connection. So, and I don't know what to do about that. And that sometimes works. I don't know if you heard, it froze up on me again. So I do think that the house is too large. I think that is actually, that is very different than the houses that are around there. There are two large houses. But this house is 31 feet high, which is, the way for me to compare it is there's the Alzheimer's unit on North State Road is like 35 feet high. This is going to be as high as that, and it's a single family home. It seems really, really high, and over 4,000 square feet. It does seem just really out of character.
So if I could address
I think
that,
it's too
is that
large.
okay? I'm sorry, I don't know if you're frozen or if,
I think she's frozen.
so in the interim, I'll just note that the height limit in the R40 zoning district is 35 feet. So we're actually still under the required height in the zoning district.
Okay, while we're waiting for Donna, are you back? Did you hear that?
I'm back. Maybe I should call in or something.
It might make sense. Frozen again. Can you,
Did I call in?
Us, Donna?
Did I call in? I don't know how to do that.
Question. When you are frozen, can you hear us?
No, I cannot. So
You should try to call in. But did you hear her answer, Jody Cross's answer to you in that?
about the size of the house?
Yes.
No, I did not.
Want to restate it, Cross?
But can you tell me how to call in? Like I think I'm gonna have to do that if it keeps.
Yeah, I think that there's a call-in number on, if you can see on the agenda that was sent by, there is a call-in number.
Yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't sent in a printed form, so I don't have it.
Okay, read it out. You have a pen?
Yep.
Okay, it's 1-929-205-6099.
All right, I can't even hear you. So I'm gonna sign out and then try to find the agenda and then sign out, and I'm gonna call back in, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Are there other comments from board members?
I mean, I can address the height issue as well. I kind of agree with the applicant. I don't think the Tavano houses are if they are lower, they're not much shorter than this house, and just a typical 2-story with a roof is going to fall into that ballpark. As long as the house, as far as I'm concerned, if the house is compliant with the zoning regulation, which it is, I think they've addressed most of the issues that we brought up at the last meeting. I appreciate the screening and the fact that we're talking about trying to shoehorn in another house after this on this property. So I'm comfortable with what's been presented.
The board?
I'll agree with Manny to the extent, and probably Donna. I'm sorry we can't save the maple tree, but the sugar maple. But other than that, I kind of agree with Jim. It fits the envelope they've been given, and actually I think it's a nice looking house. So
Thank you.
Jason, did we lose you? You were wanting to say something earlier.
I am here. I just was trying to help Donna's connection by turning off my video. And I just want to ask this because I was only involved in the process just now. I'm just curious. It seems like the fact that sprinklers are going to be involved in the house, which is a great thing, acknowledges that it's a thin driveway, so it could be tough for emergency vehicles to access it. Not impossible, but difficult. So I guess that raises the question for me, how construction vehicles are going to access this site along that driveway without impeding, perhaps hurting other trees in the process or impeding on the neighbors. I'm sure there's a plan in place for it. I'm just curious to understand how that might work. And I understand that's not necessarily the purview of the ARB, but I'm curious about that.
I just want to help with tech support, Donna. I think you might have to mute your phone line.
Okay.
Sorry for overstepping there.
Hey, Jason, so yeah, I'd just like to address that real quick. So yeah, the planned route for construction vehicles is to come in where the proposed driveway is located. It's a they're going to be following that same path that's shown on the plan. They're going to have to make that work. That's the only planned access for the site, and that's how we are planning to get construction vehicles in there.
Yeah, Andrew, I can speak to that as well. Anthony Carino for Welcome Homes. Jason, thanks for the question. I mean, pretty simply, all the construction vehicles are street legal vehicles. So anything that's going to fit down a road is going to fit down the driveway. We'll have crushed stone and a construction driveway in there while we're working. And then upon completion, we'll finish that driveway for our customer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Donna, did you want to pick up where you left off?
Yes, so I'm going to try this, and if I have to go to the phone, I will. I've got it on the ready. So did the issue of the size of the house get addressed?
We heard you, Donna. Yes. Our response was that it is conforming, and I can let Jody repeat if she'd like.
So what is it conforming to? What other houses are that tall there and large, that size?
Well, I think as Jim noted, that this is a typical two-story house. It's conforming with the zoning code. It's actually lower than what's permitted under the zoning code. The zoning code for the R40 district has a maximum height of 35 feet, so we are actually under that.
Yes, but the ARB is looking at if it's dissimilar, or it's not going based on the code, it's going based on the character of the surrounding area. So that's a different issue than the code. So that's my comment. I'll move on. Thank you for the change to the outdoor lighting. That's a great change. With the photos that were sent, it looks like there's a lot of vines on the trees. I would assume that the new homeowners don't want to have that. So it would be great to have all of that removed because that is visually unattractive. I did have a hard time understanding, like with the screening, when you're showing the photos of the screening, what it would look like when the trees are removed. So when you're going to place another tree, it'd be great. There seems to be an area where you're having your soil stockpile, which is close by to the tree that Jason was bringing up, the 35-inch tree. That would be a great place to put a tree in that spot, since you're taking that tree out, and perhaps maybe a tree by the other trees that Jason was mentioning that are coming out because of the road construction. That seems like it would be a good place to put back a tree. That would be my comment on that. So the big issue that I have is that there's being plantings proposed near that, that pond in the area that was filled. This is a very unusual project, property, because it was illegally filled. The pond was much bigger and it was filled in, and now, and when I was, so I'm worried because it was done illegally, no one ever determined what that was that they filled it with. And I'm looking at the GIS maps, and it looks like nothing's grown in the 30 years since that's been filled, 30 plus years that's filled. So I'm wondering how viable that soil is. So I'm questioning how successful the plantings will be. I truly think, as part of this ARB, those trees are important, and I think that the soil should be analyzed. There should be an analysis of how deep the fill is down to the native soil level. The percolation of the soil should be determined, particularly if you're putting in a, you know, the rain garden, all those plants. I mean, if the soil isn't functioning as it should, then the plants aren't going to function and they're not going to live. So I think that should definitely happen. Especially you got a stormwater basin in there. Generally, I think you have a lot of really, really great plants proposed. But I am worried about that, because I look on the GIS and I see, like, between 1976 and 1990, that was when the major filling was done. And it looks like, again, fill came in on between 2004 and 2007, and then between 2016 and 2018. So
Donna, if I could just address your comment real quick. So on our landscaping plan, we have a pretty comprehensive list of construction details for how things are going to be installed. So for example, a lot of the plantings that are proposed right along the pond, we're proposing 24 inches of suitable, topsoil material that's going to help those plants really thrive in that environment. So we did put a lot of thought into how this was going to be installed to make sure those plants were successful. And we're definitely trying to take into account your feedback from our last meeting with that. So hopefully that kind of addresses your comment with
yeah, that wouldn't address the percolation rate, though. Like that I think is problematic. Because you're putting soil on top, and truly, plants, the roots go like 18 inches. So if you're putting 24 inches, that should be fine. Are you taking soil out? Is that what you're doing? Like you're saying you're putting 24 inches of soil and you're taking 24 inches out of the, the fill out? Is that what you're doing?
Right. So if you look at the detail, yeah. So we're not planning on changing any of the grade in that area. So to be able to get those plants to really thrive, it would be to remove that amount of soil and replace it with a planting soil that's going to help those plants. So that would be correct.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. Okay. I just want to see what else I had here. So the Magnolia virginiana and the Circus canadensis, that was just for improving the function of the the water, like the buffer. That's not for screening, correct?
Right. So a number of those plantings were to increase their resource value, and then the other plantings that are larger in nature are to provide that screening. So yeah, depending on where those are planted, it's really to kind of give some resource value to that
they
area.
wouldn't screen a 31-foot house. Neither of those trees would do that. They're too small. Okay, so that's
Understood.
Right. Okay, that's good. The other issue I have is, and this always comes up. I guess Kathy can help me on this. I'm not crazy about all the foundation plants, and I don't really know that that's something that the Architectural Review Board should be speaking to, but particularly that Asian grass, this is such a beautiful wetland area, like putting that in, I don't really understand that at all, and the Nepeta, but I don't know, our authority usually is limited to the trees, so I don't know if that's something that we should rule on, because those two plants are things that I really hate. But I don't know if I have any right to say anything about that.
Are those native plants or?
No, the Asian, it's probably borderline invasive. Oh, actually, I don't know if it is or not, but it's not like a little blue stem or something. Everything else is very good, though. I mean,
This board usually does encourage native planting, so maybe there's something else you could recommend instead of.
Donna, if I may just interject one more time.
Right.
So yeah, our landscape plan was proposed to try and incorporate as many of those native plantings as possible into here. There was some additional plantings that weren't on that list, and the purpose of that was really to get some plants that were going to be successful due to the amount of sunlight and the close proximity to each other and things of that nature. So there was some deviations from that, but the majority of the plantings that are proposed are really consistent with your planting your guide on the website. So
right. Yeah, the Nepeta is pretty invasive. It can be kind of weedy. Yeah, so anyway, I don't like those two at all. And the beach that you have, so the issue comes up a lot. So that looks, very ornamental, and I don't want to impede on anybody doing, because you're putting a lot of plants in impede on your choices, but it is like a monoculture. It's a very ornamental variety because it's so columnar, I believe, and and there is a beech bark borer in the area, so you have a whole row of them. So that would be my concern of that. But again, you're putting in so many good things. I don't want to be overly critical about that. My main concern is the soil, which if you're addressing that, it seems like, and I do feel that the house is too large. So I think that would be my comments for now. But thank you for all those great plants.
Thank you.
Other comments from members of the board? Seeing none, we could.
Gareth, can I just say, I didn't address some of the planting notes are a little bit problematic. First of all, the plants are only guaranteed 1 year. We're as of late, we're asking for more than that, and like number 9 on your list where you're removing all the wire baskets and all, that's so excellent. And the other thing, there's like 2 places where the owner's representative is going to be approving, like if the plants get replaced or moved around or anything. So I don't know. It's always, I think, good to have like a town representative or somebody that's not the owner's representative. Just verify it. So that would be my comment. But definitely more than 1 year guarantee. That's it. Sorry, Gareth.
That's okay. Applicant, are you willing to agree to, we've been going with 3 years recently, guaranteed a lifetime on the plantings. Are you willing to agree to that?
Yes, we can agree to that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Very good. Any other comments from the board or consultants? If not, we do have a member of the community who has their hand raised. Could we recognize John Skibilia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, thank you. I'm at John Sibilia, 70 Summerstown Road. And it's fun listening to what our new neighbor's house may look like. And we've only been here a few years. I have 2 plantings questions, if I may, because I understand that's where we're at. And I guess they're both for Andrew. One is right across the pond, not England, right across our pond, there are some trees on that property with pink ribbons on them. And they appeared in the last month and a half. What do they indicate? Are those trees coming down? Do they indicate some kind of a border? Just wondering.
Yeah, John, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with what the pink ribbons signify. What I can tell you is that the only trees that are planned to be removed are the ones that are shown on the civil plans. So those are the 10 trees that are noted with the X mark on those. Anything else beyond that is not not planned for removal. I'm sorry, I don't have any knowledge about the pink ribbons
Hey.
though.
Maybe I can speak on that because we have some, are you talking about red ribbons tied around the trunk, right?
Well, they're
They're
not
pink,
red.
pink. They're pink.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are trees that the city identified to be cut because they're in the line of the wires, overhead wires, basically. So
Well, there are no wires there, believe me.
Oh, okay, okay. But
I
yeah.
understand the wire issue, and there's been a lot of work on Summerstown Road with respect to that. But this is really, there are no wires there.
Okay, in particularly my street, there were about 3 trees that they identified.
Sure.
That, they asked our permission if they can be trimmed or, or even cut, because some looked like they were dying and they were too close to the
Sure.
wires.
Well, I'll keep my eyes out to see what that mystery is. The other question is with respect to screening. I'm not sure I saw much screening planned for the northeast, which is where our house is in relation to 68 Summerstown. And I may have missed it and I apologize. But any screening for us, I saw the concern for the other 2 houses. Not sure I heard that for us. And if you could show that to me, it'd be great, Andrew.
Yeah, John, I think the limits of what we're proposing is really what's shown on the landscape plan. We did a pretty comprehensive review of what existing screening was on site from different vantage points. And we were trying to satisfy the board's requests on those matters, but also, be aware of the surrounding neighbors. And our landscaping plan, we feel it does comply with as much of that as possible. So
Andrew,
I think that's the best best answer that I can offer about that.
Andrew, if you wouldn't mind, would you share your screen and point out the screening on the plan so that
Great.
everyone, as you speak to it?
John, if you could you direct me to where your home is located in relation to the site? You said it was northeast 70.
Northeast,
Summerstown
so we're
Road?
70. So our house doesn't show here as it does on some of the other, that it shows on some others.
Okay.
So I can't tell from this map. I'm really sorry. I'm trying though.
How about if you could you direct me on this map?
Yeah, can you make it a little bigger though? I'm an old guy. Let's see. There's Summerstown.
What is your address?
70.
So aren't you the house that's sort of located between the 2 ponds?
No, well, yes,
Like
correct.
that one.
That's it. That's the
it.
one.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. So, yeah, John, so we go back to this landscaping plan. So there's a notable amount of existing trees that are there. And we saw that was a nice feature to the site. So what we did was we decided to add on to that with additional plantings and trees to be able to increase the screening between your property and the proposed home site. So you can see here the color plantings show what we're proposing in that area to kind of beef up the buffer between your property and this.
Yeah, that's what's there isn't much. And most of the screening is probably from the evergreens we have on our side of the fence. But, we'll see how long, we're going to be able to keep them. We're doing the best we can. But I'm glad to see there'll be additional planting there. That's helpful.
Yes.
Thank you for the time. I'm done. I do agree with Donna, though. I do think the house is a little big, but I'm done.
Thank you. Are there any other members? Yes. I don't know the order they came in. Do you know, Sandy? Go ahead, Beth.
If I can answer you, okay. I've been doing a lot of Zoom lately, so I'm kind of, I apologize for that. Thank you, everybody. I'm at 6 Savannah Road, so I'm across the street from where this would happen. My backyard does not back up on it. One of the questions I had, I don't know who wants to answer this, probably pretty simple for you guys, but I'm not that great at looking at the site plans. So curious about septic, sewer, assuming septic. I see there's a propane tank, so I'm imagining that's how the house is going to be run. I don't know, it's 500 gallons, something, I don't know. And I'm assuming electric's got to run through that driveway. So curious how the utilities that need to come in there are and what does need to come back there. Just curious. I don't know if that's beyond this point of me asking that, but.
Sure. So the utilities are run. There's public water and sewer that's available on the site. The water and sewer lines have already been installed prior to this application coming forward. So it is planned to tie into those. There is a propane tank that's going to be buried on site to provide service for appliances within the building. And electric service is also going to be run up the driveway.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, Andrew. I was also concerned because of a different property recently, 83 Somerstown, where a beautiful pond. I don't even really know what happened there, but it's really quite disturbing to drive by there and see what had been done to it. So I got a little concerned. I don't know if this is also beyond where we can be, but who keeps an eye on this dig out of the 24 inches and the replacing of the soil so that this doesn't become a beachhead like a previous other developing neighbor decided to do?
I would suggest that that's probably the building department, John Hamilton. And in fact, regarding the neighbor you're referring to, they received a fine and had to remediate what they had done. And that was handled through the building department, John Hamilton.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. Appreciate that. And, I know that you guys already, I guess, just putting it out there, I know you guys are very well aware of this on both sides. You guys know your jobs far better than I. Just making sure that you guys really, the board takes really into account how hugely wet that property is and really, appreciates it and honors it so that it, at least whatever needs to be done, it doesn't start pouring out onto the other neighbors, which is not really me because it would take a lot of pouring to get to me. And I will say that I am one of the guilty parties that owns a large home that's probably pretty close to the size that you guys are building. I built it 30 years ago. I was a different person then, and I would not do again to this piece of property where I live that I did to it back then, just out of respect for the property and nature. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next in order on my screen is Shanti Vargas.
Hi. Andrew, I hate to beat you up on this, but going back to screening, we are 13 Savannah Road. And I can see on your plans that you have screening for a lot of, but there is a gap that where our house directly would face this new construction house, and there's no screening plan there whatsoever. Any reason for that?
The slide that shows the different properties and what the screening would be relative to 13 Savannah Road. Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Bear with me for a moment.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Would you mind pointing me to which home is yours on this
Yes.
site
So
map?
you won't see our home, but you see that pond. You see number 8. The
Yes.
pond right to the right of it. That's our pond there.
Okay.
And so there's a gap, no vegetation or trees or anything right between there somewhere. I can't see it from this angle. but it's a very large, like cleared out area where we see directly to that property. Just wondering why wasn't any screening provided that end?
So just to clarify, so your home is
No,
located where my cursor
so
is?
if you go further up, you see that big pond with the little bridge and the island. That's our
Yes.
pond. Our house is further up from there, so it's not, you can't see it on this capture. But our view, our house, the front of our house directly faces this empty space right here on the corner. So if you see the edge of the, right, so from right there over, if you go down that
Yes,
right,
you're referring to screening in this area over here.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, in answer to your question, our landscape plan was really focused on like really two things: to increase the resource value and to provide screening to the directly adjacent sites or directly adjacent properties. So
directly
we thought we
adjacent.
did a pretty good job of proposing landscaping in those areas. You know,
But is
again,
my
we're going
property
above and
not
beyond.
directly adjacent?
Right, but we are going above and beyond the number of trees that are you know, being removed. We're actually more than doubling the number of trees that are being removed, and we mentioned that we're gonna, you know, add one additional tree to make sure that the calculation for the caliper is being addressed. So, you know, in answer to your question, we didn't propose anything here. I don't have a, you know, better answer of why there was no screening proposed here. But yeah, we thought we really addressed the board's comments with trying to really add to the resource value of the area.
Andrew, if I could just jump in, if you're looking at the house, the front right there, the square that I guess you see that's jutting out on the front, that's the garage. So there'll be cars parked in there, but there's really no windows on the side of the house that has a direct line to the gap between the trees. So I guess my question for you is, are you concerned about seeing this house, or are you concerned about being seen by the house?
Both, and during construction as well. I mean, I'm just wondering, when you're talking about sort of providing the screening for neighbors, why is that even relevant if it's really just about replanting trees that are being taken down? I'm just trying to understand what this point is for screening. There's going to be a lot of construction now. You know, now there's going to be a house there that I never saw before from my home, and vice versa.
Applicant, are you willing to throw in a couple more trees there and solve this issue?
If I may, I think that we are really adequately addressing the landscaping on the site. My solution would be to not propose any additional trees, and if anything, relocate the trees that we are proposing on the site. But again, then that would take away screening from other areas that was previously identified. So, you know, my standpoint would be to try and maintain the number of trees and plantings we currently have shown.
And if I may, I think the goal here was to screen the houses that are in close proximity, not necessarily the lots in close proximity. It seems that that house, respectfully, is quite a distance from this house.
But screen the houses from what exactly?
Well, ma'am, Jody's comment.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm 9 Tavano. I'm actually much closer. My property runs deep. So Scott, turn off here. My property runs deep. My property runs long. I go from Tavano Road further back than the rest of the properties. And when I am in my backyard, I am looking directly upon that sugar maple tree that is old and big and beautiful. Amazes me that you can't get 5 more feet in there. We're going to have great exposure to this building project. There is no field of trees between us and your plot of land that you're looking to build on. We're going to be greatly impacted by it. I'm very concerned about the propane tank. It looks like you're planning on putting a propane tank just outside the corner of my property. And I don't know if that's going to be above ground or underground and who's going to monitor that. I can say that there does seem to be a big shortage of screening in that area compared to the way it's been. I'd like to also add that everybody already knows my ground is soaking wet. I cannot grow grass. I can only grow moss, crabgrass, and there's an enormous amount of wildlife that travels through there. So I have very, very big concerns about what it means to build a house with that much weight on it. And even if there's a height consideration, we haven't even talked about the width of it and how it could sort of take away from the landscape. And what?
It will impact the view of.
Oh, it will certainly impact everybody's view, but I don't have the right to decide with respect to your board. But the view of what?
The historic district.
Oh, the historic district, well, that they can determine that. But again, I'm very, very nervous about all the things that are about to be planted next to me. Can somebody talk to me about the propane tank? What's going on with that?
Hang on a second, Ian. So Shanti, we didn't really, but we'll get back after we hear some others, because
Yeah, I want to understand what this screening is about and what you're shielding neighbors from, because again, right now there is nothing in our line of sight. I can't view into a property because there isn't a property there, and vice versa. Not to mention the construction that's going to be going on, the noise. It's clear access into my property. That pond right there, there are, like we utilize that pond. It's very close to that house. So I need to understand the screening a bit better. I need to understand why it wasn't considered.
Sure, if I can just address your comment real quick.
Before you go on, Andrew, Mr. Chairman, I think it might be best, since this is a public hearing, and the public's supposed to be addressing their comments to the board, that it might be best for them to, express their comments. You take notes on those comments, and then if there are specific comments that you want the applicant to address, then maybe that would probably be a little bit more efficient. Because right now there's a lot of back and forth going between the applicant and the public, and where it might be more helpful to this board in its deliberations if the comments are directed towards you.
Okay. I'm okay with either, to tell you the truth, but I do want to get through everyone before we, really, time out. So Shanti, we've heard you. We will ask the applicant to address that screening from your property in one way or another. Ian, I did want to find out where your property was. You gave your address, but we didn't see it. I think we've lost you anyway. So why don't we move on to Jess Wright.
Hi, I'm Jess. I live at 62 Summerstown Road. I had a question specifically for Jody, what she had been addressing about the driveway. I have a long list of concerns about this very narrow, long driveway running directly up against my very narrow, long driveway, which I know the practical difficulties of living with. And I have concerns about how a new home is going to have all those same concerns on a greater scale as it is more narrow and substantially longer. So you've addressed sprinklers for the fire department, fine, even though that doesn't seem sufficient when you have the propane tank. I would like to know about frontage. Where does the mailbox go? Where does the trash get picked up? I don't believe they have sufficient width up at the entrance to the driveway. I'd like to know about the reinforced entrance at Summerstown Road with the driveway. That's on the civil plans. And if that's required, I'm curious why it's not required for, if not the entire length of the driveway, the area that's right next to my 1920s home, which has already got its own natural stability issues. And like we've addressed, it's a very wet property. I have runoff concerns, flooding concerns. There's an issue with my fence, which I only had to install because the people who would come and tour this property were turning around in my backyard where my kids are playing. So we put the fence to deter that. And I've since seen others drive down my driveway. So hi, construction team. Those are my primary concerns. We also have the ongoing issues of extremely wet soil. It doesn't seem prudent to build there. I understand that this is not a comment about the subdivision, which seems to be of questionable provenance. That is the extent of my questions for this time.
Applicant, do you want to address any of those?
Respectfully, these are all site plan issues that were addressed during the subdivision process and isn't within the purview of this board as in their sitting as an ARB, though I will defer to Kathy on that. But the driveway is an approved driveway and we're utilizing what's been approved.
I would like to know one follow-up then. I do have a survey from last year, which I cited in my letter, which provides that my property ends actually at the right side. I'm not sure which direction that is. The right side of the proposed easement driveway, which again, that was done prior to my living here. So you say that was done pre-existing. I still have concerns about what was approved. Right.
Again,
Yes, I'd be glad to address your comment there on that. So let me go ahead and share my screen just so we can talk about that briefly. So the area that you referred to as an easement access way is actually not the correct notation. This is actually part of within the property limits of the subject property of the application. So this is all this map was prepared by a survey, which is all based off of the recently filed map that was submitted to the county, and that was all reviewed by the municipality before it was approved and filed. So that is not correct. The property line, actually, the property does extend all the way down this way, and it is not an easement. It is their property.
Okay, well, I can't speak to why it's written as an easement on my survey. That's fine. Let's go with that. Can we talk to what the practical implications of where does the mail go and where is the trash going?
Mr. Chairman, I defer to you whether you want us to answer these questions that go beyond the ARB.
Are these questions better suited for John Hamilton at the building department?
What do you think, Valerie? It's kind of a borderline between ARB and site plan.
I think, John's not going to know where the location of the mailbox is going to be, but if there are specific, concerns about the site plan, Sandy, the building department has the records that they're more than, happy to share the files with the public and answer any questions that they can.
So do you advise that I follow up with the building department?
I would probably start there, and if they have questions that they are not able to answer, then they'll, send you on to the appropriate department to answer this.
Anything further, Mrs. Wright?
Not for me.
Okay, thank you. Steve Rudemeyer?
Hi, Steve Rudemeyer, 56 First Avenue. Just a quick question, may have been addressed. Just concerned about the pond and as it fronts to Somerstown Road, whose responsibility is maintaining the pond? Is it public, private? And then any flooding on the road with the proposed property over here, who would handle that? Maybe it's been addressed or not, I don't know. I'm just jumping on here and trying to figure that out. Thank you.
Yeah, that's definitely a site plan issue. and generally speaking, the owners of the property are responsible for, flooding issues that emanate from it. But I think that's beyond the purview of our ARB. So maybe address that to the building department. Would you agree with that, Valerie?
I mean, again, they're more than welcome to reach out to the building department and they'll answer any questions that they're able to answer, based upon the submitted subdivision plan.
Anything else, Steve?
Just, is it a public pond or is it a private pond? I'm unsure about that.
Well, there are a number of ponds in there, but within this site plan, it's a private pond.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
But there is a conservation easement that that is associated with it. So just one to tip, but it is private. Let's see, Andrew.
Yes. Hi, good evening. My name is Andrew Brodnick. I represent Jean and Desmond Fitzpatrick, who live right behind on the south side of the border between this proposed development. They would like to be heard. I just wanted to make a brief, raise what I think is a very important issue right up front. As the applicant has conceded, their proposal to develop consistent with the plan that they've submitted renders the first lot unbuildable. So really what we're dealing with in essence now is really a single lot subdivision. And I raise that because currently where the property is sited is very, very far back from Somerstown Road. And as you can see from the site plans, is located directly behind my client's house, also directly behind 70 Somerstown Road. That gentleman, John Scalea, briefly spoke before. Clearly, obviously there's been a lengthy history to this, and there are a lot of environmental concerns that were, or maybe I should say, were not addressed during the subdivision process. But I do think there's an important issue for the Architectural Review Board to concern itself with, and that is the location of the house. The house is basically almost as far back as you could possibly push it. And meanwhile, even with respecting the two-lot subdivision setbacks, you could move this house closer to Somerstown Road, so it would not be directly behind my client's property, not directly behind 7 Somerstown Road. It would also shorten the length of the driveway, which would decrease impervious surfaces. And certainly this is something that goes directly to the purview of the Architectural Review Board.
If I might start answering that, you're frozen, Mr. Brodnick.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Let me interject, though. The applicant can show you by showing the screen. But the reason the house is as far back as it has to avoid the wetland buffer zone. And it is right up against that buffer zone. The applicant, if you want to share your screen and show that, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Andrew.
So the house is situated in such a way that we're within the allowable zoning setback requirements and also the wetland buffer requirements. So we are trying to place the home to avoid all of those constraints, and we found this was the best configuration for that.
Would you clearly point out the wetland buffer line? I see it, of course, but yep.
Right where my cursor is.
Right, and the commenter can see that there is a mere is between what looks like a back porch or a patio and the wetland buffer. So there's not a lot of wiggle room there.
And again, Mr. Chairman, I do want to point out that that's the building envelope that was approved through the subdivision process. And we think it's wise not to push into the buffer. And particularly with the other comments regarding the wet property, we want to respect that buffer. And we believe what we've proposed here does precisely that.
I'm sorry, I dropped out for a moment there. So I'm not sure exactly what the direct response was. I apologize for that. You were saying?
Do you want us to repeat it?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I don't know where you dropped out, but the applicant showed the site plan and the location of the wetland buffer and the house in relation to it. And it is, the house is located just outside the wetland buffer. So there is really no wiggle room there to bring the house closer to Stormy Town Road, as you suggested.
Well, I think that's, you see, now that if you look at what was for the other lot that now is rendered undevelopable, it was inevitable that that house was going to be located in the buffer zone. And in fact, I'm looking over the approvals that were obtained in 2016, and they did get a wetlands permit. I'm not clear exactly what that permit was for, but if we know that the other house, which is now not going to be built, which was inevitably going to be in the wetlands buffer, I don't understand why this house can't be moved so that it's located in a more reasonable position now that you've got essentially a one lot subdivision. And so basically what they're doing is this subdivision clearly was going to involve originally one house being in the wetlands buffer. So I certainly think in light of the fact that this is so inconveniently located, that going into the wetlands buffer would be a better way to place the house.
Another way to look at it is that we've actually made an improvement, given that it's not in the wetlands buffer.
I understand that, but there was a wetlands permit that was granted, and that
everything about this project is zoning compliant. We are not in the wetlands buffer, and the idea of moving this house into the wetlands buffer does not seem to be a positive. Given, I understand it might be a positive for your client, but as a project overall, we are not required to completely screen this house from every neighbor, and we are not required. I mean, we live in a neighborhood where everyone can see their neighbors. We don't need complete screening, and we certainly don't need to be moving the house from a zoning compliant location to a house that's in the wetlands. It's actually in a better location.
Well, it certainly isn't for my clients.
I understand that.
We're not talking about violating the zoning code. We're talking about obtaining a zoning permit, a wetlands permit, which apparently was granted when subdivision approval was granted. It wasn't clear exactly what kind of intrusion that was going to anticipate, but I think clearly some kind of even perhaps modest intrusion, which would locate the house better, is going to have a very, very minimal impact on the lot, particularly because now there's never going to be a second house. So it's a little discouraging that the planning board hasn't, and I don't know if they have, staked out the property and looked to see if possibly there's a slightly better location, even if it may go into the wetlands buffer, but look how much less intrusion is going to be a result of this development because the other lot's not going to be developed. And again, had it been, there was inevitably going to be intrusion into the wetlands.
Can I add something? If you look at the, there's one of the plans, I don't know which one it is, but it shows what the original pond looked like. It's a little inset on the left. My worry about moving the house closer is that you're going to put it exactly where the pond was filled. So this, where it is right now, is actually a little bit outside of that. And also the amount of how wet it is. I mean, I just feel like, and I'm also worried that I would imagine if we move it closer that it's going to be somebody else is going to object to that. So it has to, I mean, there's a lot of issues there, but it's really putting it over where the pond was filled, I just think would be a worse situation. And that's in the wetland buffer.
The whole lot was filled. The whole lot.
No, it was not.
It never should have been approved, but it is. And I don't think moving it a little bit into the wetlands buffer, which is 100 feet, which is routinely granted, It's not something that you have a very high standard of establishing. It just puts it in a more logical location.
Thank
But
you,
I
Andrew.
will, I've made my point. I'll turn it over to Jean and Desmond for their comments.
Yes, hello. And the house is as currently situated, is directly behind us, and that is not in keeping with the neighborhood. This is not Levittown. That house is dead behind our house like a domino. It could be moved even a few feet. It would make such a dramatic difference. I would also like to add that the alleged screening does not screen us. It is shrubbery. If you look at the chart and compare with the key, everything that is supposed to be screening us is actually shrubs, not trees. And we are losing our beautiful maple, which is an old, beautiful tree. There is very little concern here that we see for the beauty and harmony of the landscape, which is what this neighborhood is about. Mid-century modern or no mid-century modern.
I would just like to make some additional comments. There's a lawsuit currently about the site plan. Can building proceed if that lawsuit is still in place? How does that work? What is the sequence that actually has to happen? Because if that site plan is overturned, then you would have to start the whole process all over again. So what is the sequence? Can the building begin unless the actual lawsuit is resolved? Can somebody enlighten me on that?
I'm not going to get into a legal analysis, and I'm certainly not going to give a legal opinion.
Sorry, who's speaking? It's hard for me to tell who's speaking.
Planning board. I'm advising
Okay.
the client that we're not going to be giving any legal opinions tonight, and we're not going to be talking about the implications of the lawsuit.
Okay.
Okay, can we talk about the shrubbery and the location, please?
Could I ask the applicant to put screening diagram up again? Fitzpatrick, if you could.
So Gareth, I would like to comment on that point is well taken, that those trees at the back there, that is the same trees that I was speaking about that were down by the pond, which are really understory trees. They're not very tall. So it doesn't seem like it would be a hardship for the applicant just to put the trees in that same spot, but just put a tree that's going to be a taller tree. I think that would be, it's the Circus canadensis and the Magnolia virginiana, excellent trees, but they will never screen that house. And since they are proposing them to be in that place, if it could just be a different tree.
Yeah, Donna, I would emphasize to the board that I still don't understand the reasoning behind why that large, I guess it's a maple tree, is simply expendable as opposed to moving the house X numbers of feet. It's a beautiful tree. And it's just in terms of environmental conservation. I mean, we've lived here for 30 more years. There's 44 major sets of mammal types that love this place. Everything from Canada geese to deer to coyotes. It's a nature haven. We don't have too many of them anymore. So simply putting this in, so I have a lot of concerns. That's number one, keep the maple tree. Number two, I don't exactly know what the constraints of a site plan are. The prior house had around 2,200 square feet. This house is double. Supposing it was 14,000 square feet, what is the limit that is allowed by the planning board? Did you grant a maximum, and is it exceeded by, is it okay at 44,000 square feet? It's shocking to me. The other thing I want to make is this claim of 35 feet. Go look at the neighborhood. The neighborhood on Tavanna Road, none of those houses, with the exception perhaps of the one at the very end, or on both ends and both sides, are anything like 35 feet or 31 feet. It's ludicrous to say it fits in with the neighborhood. I don't know what neighborhood they're talking about, but in terms of the Tavanna Road, nothing is remotely like that. And I would just want to emphasize that I know people have talked about how wet this property is. Let me give you 3 examples. My neighbor said today that when they were fishing there, they were able to fish in the backyard right behind our house in the pond that was right there, right? We love this property, and that's exactly where in the middle of this lawsuit, which by the way, at the fundamentals was a miscarriage of justice, I feel for the Grants because they're stuck in a very awkward position. But the fact is they got hoodwinked by the prior owners by selling them a dumb deal. Okay, now secondly, our daughter, their very first job was because there was massive flooding in the house next door, right? Massive flooding to the extent that 10,000 LPs were ruined in that flooding. So when there's major rain, there is major flooding. I want you to be aware of that. Thirdly, I can remember a couple of years ago, I went out and did a video audio of what this property was like after heavy rain. You cannot imagine. It was squish, 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 squish everywhere. This is basically a completely saturated property. So the idea of kind of you can salve it by taking two feet up is kind of ludicrous in my opinion. There was puddles everywhere after the rain. I encourage the board before they kind of go their way and approve this to just walk there after heavy rain and experience what this place is absolutely like. It is a haven for wildlife. It is a marshland. And whatever accommodations they want to make to this client who's sort of stuck in the middle, right? I just think that, you know, whatever, we really need to look at that. Anyway, I think but you know, certain things, whatever, I think I'm done talking about it. But the one thing I have asked from the applicant, which they refused to do, was do a visual of what it looks like. I heard somebody who was advocating, who's obviously doesn't care less. Thank you, Jim, for not caring a damn what it looks like from our perspective, but we do. And so my question to you is, what does the visual look like when you plant a few shrubs in front of our house? The reality is the idea of taking down the maple, which at least provides partial blockage of the house. And the prior applicants had agreed to put up major trees in the area right between us and the house to provide adequate screening. I asked the applicant to kind of zone out where it was so we could map and take photos of what the visual impact on us and Ian next door. And I got a response saying, we don't have to do that. Well, I'm asking the board to say they should stake out where it is and make sure what the visuals clearly are to 7 Tavano, to 9 Tavano, to 5 Tavano, and to Shanty's house at number 13. I felt that Shanty also was just disregarded, like, well, we've done enough. Well, maybe you haven't planted enough trees and you need to plant more trees. And maybe then we can come to some accommodation,
I
okay?
second that. I second that. That's Shanti.
We have 0 trees. We have shrubs. Yeah.
So let me,
And the house could be moved even a few feet. It would be such a dramatic improvement. And the previous house was going to be built right in that other area. So the idea that it can't be moved is bogus. Sorry.
applicant, how could you change the screening between your property and theirs to better screen it? It sounds like taller trees rather than shrubs would be more appropriate. That's one question. And are you willing to do some of that? Secondly, I'd like to ask you point blank, is there any way you could keep that large maple? I know it's right there next to the garage, but what if you did, reasonably extensive pruning? It could provide some nice shading from the south to your house, some natural air conditioning, and it might be very pretty. It might be an advantage to your client. Could you do that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, in response to your first question, I think we would be open to modifying some of the proposed plantings in the area between 7 Tavano and the home. I'd be glad to look at alternate plantings. I think our preference would be to not add additional plantings because we are, meeting the requirements set forth by the board, but we'd be glad to look at alternate species to put in there to make sure that they have sufficient screening. In answer to your second question, it's my opinion that I really think that tree is too close to the proposed driveway, that it's not going to be successful if we were to attempt to try and keep that tree. I'm a very big proponent of trying to keep landscaping where possible, but I wanted to be realistic that I think that it's a little bit too close. It looks like there's an extensive root network that would probably be compromised by the construction. So it's my opinion that would be not salvageable.
Okay, so regarding that, what if, and I'm just thinking out loud here, and Donna might have, might cut me off as ridiculous. What if part of the driveway were the grasscrete rather than blacktop, so that the roots could get, watering and wouldn't be as compromised? And again, with the additional pruning. And a lot of the houses, a lot of the speakers from Tavano Road have addressed that, the loss of that tree as a major visual impact. If you could give it a try, if it
I'm
fits.
going to cut you off, Gareth.
Okay.
The maple tree has a very, very shallow root system, which means it's very much by the surface. And the root systems are usually twice as wide as the canopy of the tree. So it is an issue. I mean, I think the house is too big. If the house was smaller, you might be able to get away with it. That would be one solution. But as it is, that maple's not really going to be successful if the roots are buried under asphalt, or I mean, even with those concrete things, it's gonna damage the roots, in my opinion. So the issue at hand is that the size of the house is
location.
I think we've inverted the question from the applicant. I
So
hear.
if I could finish, it'd be really
Sorry,
great. Are we
sure.
done with, so the other thing is that I do feel that, so I would love to keep that tree if there was a way to do it. And the way to do it is to make the house smaller and make it more similar to the other houses. But the screening is definitely an issue. And I think that, maybe it's me that was confused, but the screening is an ARB issue, and the replacing the trees is a different issue. So what I think that I'm concerned with is that the screening is not being addressed. And I don't think it has to be, Jim's point is well taken. I don't think we have to put up a wall, and so that nobody sees anything, because that really isn't what exists around here for the most part. But I do think there can't be this big open space, like from where you have the canadensis, the circus, and the magnolia, and then there's this big open space to the corner. I mean, I do think it's reasonable to put some trees in there, and I think I think it would be reasonable to put trees that are going to be as grand as that red maple. There's several. These trees are going to get 20 feet tall, 20 to 30 feet tall. So that wouldn't do anything. So I would think that needs to be replaced to a big, a large trees. Eventually they're going to get large trees. And then also in that empty space, there needs to be some trees. And I think that's what the residents are asking. We're giving a lot of screening. You're giving a lot of screening to the people on the Tavano Road side, but not back there. One of those houses is a Tavano Road address, but it's further back. So I think that's the issue. And the other issue is the size of the house, which is costing that 35.
If I could just clarify, so you're asking for additional screening on the southeast corner of the property, is that correct?
Side that has the magnolia, like on that, the side of the garage. The side the closest to the garage. Also, may I just ask, is the propane tank being buried?
The propane tank is being buried, yes.
I thought that was illegal. I didn't think you were allowed to have buried tanks. Okay, because it would have to, I would want that to be screened for sure, because that's not attractive. But so I mean that's a building department issue, and I think that should be figured out if indeed they can put that in the ground.
It's common.
Really?
Yep.
In wetlands?
It's not in the wetland and it can be buried legally. And
Okay.
we'll make sure to go through the proper channels with the building
So
department.
that it's so just to clarify that oil tanks can't be buried, but gas tanks can? Is that
That's correct.
Okay, that's where my confusion was. Okay, so then that's not an issue. But I do think that there should be some trees put over there that are gonna, be more of a screening. If it's so wet, you could put hollies in, then you got evergreens and they're gonna get 50 feet. So,
But the house has sprinklers because fire engines can't come up that driveway effectively because it's hard to tolerate that weight under with the wet land. How is the propane tank going to have sprinklers? How does that work? This is a heavily wooded area. A propane tank with
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry,
paucity
just
of
a point
firefighters?
of clarity for me,
I
because
don't
it
think
is
that's our
hardly our
purview.
second time in front of you and our first time in a public hearing. But is this an open forum for the folks to just continue to comment, or do we close the comments at a certain point?
Excuse me, sir. I'm not sure it's your job to interrupt and say, how are we discussing? You had plenty of time to talk. The neighbors have been talking for a lot less time than the total presentation.
I'm
So I
not
would
worried about the rest
appreciate
of the
if you,
neighbors, sir. It's just
I
that
would
you
appreciate
interrupt
if you
the board
don't
when
try
they're
to
trying to
dominate
make
the
a point.
conversation and let the board run the meeting.
Yeah.
It would be great if the board ran the meeting. Yeah. So please let them continue.
Mr. Carino, I will stop the public commentary when I feel it is appropriate, and I would I think that it is very fruitful discussion. So one thing I want to mention also is that Andrew Vaccarello has mentioned several times that you put in the required amount of screening, and I want to remind you or tell you if you haven't heard it before that what you've put in is the required minimum, but we can ask you for more if we think it's appropriate, and I'm certainly getting to the point where I think that more is appropriate. And certainly from Shanti's house, my feeling is that her house might be fairly distant, but it is an open area, a wide open view, and I think that it would make sense to have some additional screening in there. And from the Fitzpatricks, based on Donna's thoughts, if I understood correctly, taller trees should be replaced there. And in the house that we originally approved for that site, we did have much more extensive screening. I remember that was a long discussion, negotiation, and it ended up with quite a lot. I don't see why it should be different this time. So I would ask you to recommend to put something additional screening taller in both of those locations for our review at the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question, please?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to clarify, and I guess this is partially for Donna, the trees that you were talking about taller, those on that side, you're not talking about more trees, just different trees. And then on
Yes.
the other location is additional trees.
Right, just switch out the species in that one spot. So, because those are understory trees, so you're going to go for like canopy trees that would be like the, what's being lost with the red maple.
And I'll defer to my client if that's acceptable, to change out those species and to add some additional trees in that open area.
Sure, we'd be glad to incorporate that feedback.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Fitzpatrick.
So I would have one more comment, and that this is, I should have brought this up before, but, and this is unfortunate. It's going to be a kind of a burden, but when all of the animals are brought up, of course, we all have those throughout Ossining, and several of them like to eat new trees, namely the deer. So there is going to have to be some protection on these trees. So that's going to have to be considered. So I just want to bring that up. That should be in the planting notes, how that's going to be addressed. Thank you.
Understood.
Do I see Paris with her hand up? Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. We're actually the applicants that are hoping to build this home. We just wanted to say thank you so much for the board for their time this evening. I know it's been quite an eventful hearing, but we feel really confident that our team has heard the feedback from our neighbors, from the board. They're addressing it, and we're just grateful for your time and attention on this.
Thank you very much.
And one other question, and for the board. If we're agreeing to change out the species and to put additional plantings, we would hope that at least we don't have to come back for a meeting, the next meeting, and then come back again for a resolution. We're asking if we could submit a new plan and still be able to get approvals if that's where the board is going.
It's a judgment call. Valerie, what do you think?
I mean, I think it's fine as long as the plans that are submitted that the board is satisfied with. I think my biggest concern is when there's a lot of changes that still need to be made. And then when we start adding a lot of conditions onto the approvals, that's where, Kathy and I tend to like to see then revised plans prior to the adoption of the resolution.
Yeah, we're asking for quite a few landscape changes here. I think it's probably cleaner just to go that extra meeting. It won't add a tremendous amount of extra time to the application. You okay with that, Valerie?
I think the applicant's asking next time. So when they submit the revised drawings, if next time the board is satisfied with what was submitted, we can have a resolution prepared for the board's consideration. The issue is if for some reason there are additional changes that are needed and they're quite voluminous, then we would recommend those changes to be addressed and then the board adopt it the following meeting.
Okay, all right, that clarifies it. That sounds good to me.
So just to be clear, so in other words, it's possible so long as we address all the comments and you're satisfied, we wouldn't have to have another meeting, but if we're not satisfied, obviously we would continue.
Right.
I think that's a fair.
So
fair
can I speak?
Go ahead.
I think I heard at least four screenings, 7 Tavano, I heard Ian at 9, Shanty at 13, and I heard 70 Somerstown Road. I think that's at least 4 sets of concerns about screening. Right, there may have been others that I missed.
Well, those were all spoken to, but we did not make a determination about all of those. We were mostly talking about yours and Shanty's. I don't know, should we look at it again? Donna, would you be willing to give your opinion on the additional screening? Whether additional screening on those other 2 are really needed?
Well, going based on the plan, it does look like there's some holes along the driveway. But it does seem like there are some holes.
And significant.
Determine that it's not the usual keys I see like for the symbols for the plants, so it's really hard for me to like put what they are. RRAT, that means nothing to me.
Perhaps Andrew could interpret that.
Some of those look like they're small shrubs. Is that what that is?
Andrew?
Yeah, I'm sharing the screen now. Can we just clarify which areas we're talking about?
So, do you have another sheet which shows the neighborhood houses, their location, and the screening relative to each of those?
We submitted this exhibit that shows photos from different perspectives of where the existing shrubs are located. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I guess ideally I would like to see a sheet in a plan that shows the house, or that includes the house and includes all of the Tavano Road houses that are under discussion in a plan, not a photograph. Do you have that?
Are you saying a plan like this that shows the surrounding houses and to put the planting on there?
That's what I would think you'd want to see. Otherwise, how would we know what the screening is.
If I can just speak for a moment, if you don't mind, just the goal should be to show the properties, show where the house is, and show what the visual sightlines would be before and after planting.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, so I think the intent is to ensure sufficient screening around the neighboring properties that have concerns. So I think my plan is to go back and revise the landscaping plan to show sufficiently. You noted before that we're showing the minimum amount, or we're showing the minimum amount that's required. Our plan is to go above and beyond and trying to add additional plantings to make sure we get that level of screening. So I think what my plan would be is to fill in some of these areas over here that have been noticed of concern. There was a question before that I didn't get a chance to address, and let me just speak briefly. The reason there wasn't a lot of screening in this area was because the offsite land right before the pond offsite, this is really grass areas. So we're trying to maintain the existing characteristic of the area and kind of flow nicely into that. But if that's the neighbor's preference, we can look at additional options for some screening in that area. But yeah, our plan would be to submit a revised copy of this that really fills in this area, changes out the planting types to get the dense cover that you're looking for, and add additional screening.
And Mr. Vaccarello, just so I can clarify, they will be evergreens and the trees will not be during the winter bare, will they?
Mr. Chairman, these directions to the applicant should be come from the board.
I really don't mind some crosstalk. I think it's useful. But Andrew, evergreens, is that what you're proposing? And Donna, is that what you would suggest or be comfortable with?
Yes, we can propose that.
I personally wouldn't want all evergreens for sure. I mean, I just think like, river birch or something would be really excellent with the wet soil. I mean, you got wet soil, so you're gonna, there's a lot of trees that aren't gonna want that. I defer to.
You defer to who? I didn't hear that. Oh.
The applicant to propose the plantings and then discuss. But you have a lot of very small over here. They look like giant big circles, but they are going to be really small plants. They're rhododendron. I think it says RR8 HAT, and that's what you have indicated as being a rhododendron. And then the other ones are mountain laurels. They're very, very small. So, if you're going to go left on that plan, there looks like there's some holes, and I don't know exactly where the other neighbors said that there's holes. Maybe switch out some of those small things you're putting in and put them over there. Put something larger over there. I mean, those are really small shrubs.
Okay.
Sure. So what my plan would be is to work with our landscape architect to get a solution that's gonna, work well in that area. I know it's a dense area, so we want trees that are gonna really work well and be successful there, and also give the screening. So. Yeah, the revised plan will take that feedback into account.
Okay.
But even some of those rhododendrons over in that other spot would add a little bit of screening, because they're going to get 12 feet. Right. Anyway, yeah, so I look forward to seeing what you propose.
Okay, Andrew, and please do address all potential sparse areas. So not just those two properties, but the other ones as well. We'll leave it to you to identify those for this draft. And please wow us so we don't have to keep negotiating for more. Just do it right, as though those houses were your own. And we'll look forward to seeing that new plan.
If I can just clarify before we get off the topic. So the plan will be to really focus on these areas where my cursor is right here. So we'll focus on increasing the screening along this side of the property. Is that the intent for what the board is looking for?
Not. It is.
I think along the driveway also. Like there was. If you go, so yeah, where your cursor is, there's a couple little.
Right, and I wanted to touch on that because I don't know if I mentioned that before, but the reason there isn't a lot proposed here is There is substantial existing screening in that location. It is densely vegetated in that area. There's also existing utilities that run in this location. So those would be in conflict with proposed trees. And so we felt a combination of that utility conflict with the existing vegetation. We didn't focus plantings in that area because of that reason. And we found that it was less densely screened in this area where my cursor is. So that's why we focus in this area. So I just wanted to clarify that this area was not proposed because there is existing screening in that spot.
Is there any chance that we could do a site walk? Because I can't get any sense of what the trees are. So would I be able to come up the only
I think that's a good idea. The photographs don't really show it well.
I'm a
And
little worried. I have a Prius though, so I can't come in that wet soil. So I'm not really sure where I'm gonna park.
May I say something? Can, please come walk around my backyard. I really appreciate you offering to do so and having an opportunity. So
Well,
please
I'm
come.
not going to engage with the residents. That's not my intent. I just want to merely take a walk on the driveway and just.
You may enter through my property.
okay, thank you. 9
Tavana Road, you may enter onto my backyard.
But the applicant has to give me permission. Go onto their
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
John,
70 someone, if I may, Andrew was pointing out areas and left out 70 Somerstown. I'd like to be sure that's included in this new review.
are you making note of that, Andrew? So all along the driveway, wherever there seem to be addressable sparse areas, in addition to the corner area that mostly affects the Fitzpatricks and the Shanty Vargas. Okay.
And on us at 9 Tavana, we're right there also, smack dab against it.
And 9 Tavana.
Yes.
Okay.
Understood. So if I would just like to clarify one more time so I make sure I'm getting the intent here. We're going to focus increasing the screening around where my cursor is in this location. In this area over here, it's the understanding that there's existing vegetation, that the plantings are not going to be successful. So we're not planning to focus plantings in here. But we will plan to have plantings in this area.
Andrew, and there's utilities in the driveway, so it would make it difficult to add additional plantings?
That's right. So there's existing utilities there and there's also existing vegetation. So those two things were considered for this landscaping plan and why there's nothing proposed now.
Right. Well, we're going to do a site walk, and we can see then for ourselves the extent to which those utilities would prohibit plantings if they seem necessary to us. And as it has been pointed out, screening doesn't have to block every absolute view to building. They have every right to build there. Neighborhoods develop, and while I think we bend over backwards to try to make the neighbors happy as can be. It'll never be perfect, and please understand that. Okay, I think we've covered this pretty thoroughly.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
if I may ask a question, I think we've lost sight of also the architecture of the house. So we wanted to know if there are any comments about the materials that are being proposed, the architecture. We just want to make sure that doesn't go unaddressed.
So it has been pointed out by a number of board members, not all, that the house is very large, both in its area and its height. Is there anything you can do to reduce the footprint and reduce the height?
It's our position, Mr. Chairman, that this is a zoning compliant house. It is what the prospective residents want to have there, and it's lower than what's required and complies with every other zoning requirement. And it was noted, even if a number of the houses are lower, there are bigger houses within the neighborhood. And, you know, we're doing the screening, and even if they are bigger, that doesn't mean it's inconsistent or not harmonious with the neighborhood.
Okay, and we will be getting, we will be requiring the SHPO review, and they will speak to those issues of compatibility. So we can wait for their objective viewpoint on that. Okay, anything else from the board? Anything else from the consultants on this? Okay, and the applicants know what you're coming back with at the next meeting. Is April 20th a sufficient time? Or would you like to go for the May 4th meeting?
I think the
No,
April
we should be
20th
able
meeting
to-
will be sufficient.
We should get the next meeting. We should be able to get that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I think it's been a useful discussion.
Thank you to the board and to the members of the public. We appreciate your time.
Good night.
you.
Good night.
The next application before us is River Knoll, 40 Croton Dam Road. And this is a completeness review of the supplemental draft environmental impact statement. Why don't we start with Valerie?
Okay, so I provided the board a memo. We still have some concerns that the EIS there are still some outstanding items that need to be completed in order to deem this DEIS complete. You know, I know it's getting late, so in terms of, you know, I just want to talk a little bit topic-wise. One of the things is that we specifically requested variances and waivers to be identified on the approved plan, as well as any variances and waivers that would need to be required as part of some of the alternatives. Those have not been yet defined or identified completely in the DEIS. The other item is the site layouts, specifically dealing with some of the alternatives. We noted that, you know, at the original completeness review, specifically asked for all steep slopes and wetlands to meet the code requirements of your subdivision chapter 176, section 18, F1 and 2. And those, while the applicant did provide calculations based on a site-wide, you know, based on site-wide calculations, we are really specifically looking for individual lots, because that's really how the code reads. It focuses on the individual lots, not necessarily a site-wide calculation. And so as part of the completeness review, we asked them to update the layouts if those codes cannot be met based upon the current layouts that they had identified, and that has not been done. And then the visual analysis, specifically dealing with some of the public streets from the neighboring neighborhoods, and those renderings have not been finalized yet. I do know the applicant is here tonight to demonstrate some 3D imaging, but we're still looking for some of those renderings, specifically from some of the neighboring properties, the public right-of-ways, as well as some of the streets. And then finally, the retaining walls, that was something else that was identified by this board, specifically identifying the lengths and heights of the retaining walls. And while the applicant did refer to a particular plan, they did not specifically identify the heights and lengths within the document, nor is it really easily identifiable on the plan itself. So those are really I think the broader topics of still the remaining comments, and we identify each one of the comments that have not been yet addressed. So we recommend that this board still deem the SDEIS as incomplete. And the other thing, we provided the board traffic analysis and the completeness there associated with that. And there was just a few remaining comments associated with the traffic analysis as well.
You're on mute, Gareth.
And Valerie, all of your comments are in your memo of April 4th?
That's correct.
Okay. So why don't we go directly to Glenn to show us the 3D modeling and the renderings, and then we can get back to questions from the board. Are you comfortable with that, Valerie?
Yep.
Okay, Glenn, we're looking forward to seeing the 3D presentation.
Okay, well, I didn't realize we were going to do that, but I will pull it up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we did. Okay.
No. I will pull it up. You could give me a second.
Okay. I thought we would give a preview to everyone, and I think it's an important aspect of this application at this time, so
Sure.
the community can get a sense of what things look like from their own property lines, or at least the areas of their property.
Hold on, I'm in the wrong project. Hold on.
While you're looking for that, let me remind the community that this is not a public hearing, not yet. Only after the applicant has addressed the issues that Valerie just spoke of, and any others that might come up tonight, will we at a later meeting accept the DEIS as complete, and then we'll open a public hearing.
Okay, can you see this?
Not yet.
All right. So, do you have to share the screen? How do you do that?
Sandy?
Glenn, at the bottom of your screen, there should be a share screen.
Yep, got it. And I got it. Okay. I think that'll work. Share. Can you see that? Can you hear me?
Yep, you're on.
Yes, we can see it.
Those are my kids. See my kids? That's in Japan.
Excellent. Kyoto, I think you said, right?
It's Kyoto. See the shrine? Golden Shrine.
Fantastic.
All right. That's really more interesting than this. Okay. So, here we go. Now we could develop a golden shrine on that side. That would look really, you guys would love that, I bet. All right, so we did, at this point in time, I don't know what you do or don't have. So we've done quite a bit of modeling, as you can see. This is Croton Dam Road, 9A's over here. And Grandview.
Can you make it a little larger, Glenn?
Sure, sure. Is that helping? Here,
No.
I'll make it full screen.
Yep, that's best.
Is that good? Okay. And I also want to welcome Manny and Jason. If you want to do a site walk, which everybody else has done, I'm happy to do that. I think the project seems much different. So this is Narragansett, the park across the street. We do have connections to the park, and then Pershing down here. Okay. So we have, within this presentation, there are these various vantage points that we're going to show you. So this is obviously zeroing in on the site. Grandview here, Narragansett up here, and Pershing down here. So the current entrance is what we're maintaining. We are proposing an emergency access here, which is essentially, it'll look like grass, but it has, in your architects, Jim and Manny, you may know, it's weight bearing, but it will look like grass from the road. And similarly, we have an emergency access up here off of Narragansett. Can you hear me?
Hold on a second, Glenn. Colleen Donnelly, could you mute? Thank you.
And basically, it's two cul-de-sacs, the plan. One cul-de-sac that winds up to the top. All of the current hospital buildings sit up here. There's a building that sits literally on the property line down here. And then there's an admin building, a maintenance building, and a doctor's home that sit down in this corner. Okay, they go all the way up to this edge. So we have two cul-de-sacs, a cul-de-sac running down the back. And then again, this cul-de-sac that runs up to the top. All of these houses, townhouses, have views of the Hudson and oblique views of the religious order. I can't think of the name right now, up here in the corner.
No.
Yes.
No.
We have, so from a site planning standpoint, we've been very careful to maintain the front green meadow. So it's pretty much the same as you see it today. There will be swales that will be for water storage. So all of the impervious surfaces will end up in these. There's also another small one here and a small one down here and another one down in this corner. We have one wetland, which is a small wetland down in this corner, and all of the development is outside of the setback, the wetland setback. So we have no interference with the wetland setback. That wetland, in my opinion, is caused primarily from runoff from Narragansett. It's not like it's a lake or a pond. And then we have an entrance clubhouse, we're calling it, and there are views of it as we get going. So this is the entrance. This is Croton Dam Road heading west towards 9A up here. We're proposing a clubhouse with a pool with landscaping. It's about a story and a half clubhouse. All of the architecture is what we call modern farmhouse style. And this is looking up to the top of the site. When you come in currently, straight ahead of you, there's this fairly significant rock outcropping that will all stay the same. And this is looking at it, looking west. Once again, 9A is down in here, heading down towards town. This is that emergency road I was telling you about. It's not really road, it's access for emergency vehicles. If there's some event where that main entrance were blocked off, we think that's remote, but we do have a breakaway bollards and a fence here. And then this is where all the existing hospital buildings currently sit, up in here. And then there's a building that sits on the property line over here. This is looking at it from Narragansett. Again, this is the other emergency access point. It would be essentially at the, this is almost if you were standing at the entrance to the park. This is looking at it from 2nd Avenue, looking up to the property. Today, there are buildings that sit up here. The actual tallest building is about another 10 to 12 feet taller than our tallest building. It has the spire that sits right about there. And this is now more of a bird's eye view, looking out all of the quarter-acre lots, 1st and 2nd Avenues over here, Pershing, Narragansett winding down here, Grandview, and then the subdivision you were talking about earlier is this property here. Okay, that's 51 Croton Dam Road. It sits right there. So there's essentially 3 lots there, and those lots are half acre that he was proposing. Half acre to 6/10 of an acre. I was looking at his plan. Again, the top of the site, all of these units look out towards the Hudson. Spectacular views. And that's it. I mean, we can, talk more about, we have, more of, closer in views, if you'd like, of some of these neighborhoods. But we've taken a lot of care in maximizing the sight lines to adjoining properties. As an example, these Pershing Avenue homes all sit about 20 feet or so below these homes here with extensive green buffering in there. These homes will not see this. And similarly, we'll back up to some of the other properties. We've created a very significant green buffer here. We have some people who are very worried about the project who sit in here. Today, there exists a building right here. It's a building that was a game room for the hospital. There's all parking in here right now. There's a basketball court that sits here today. All that goes away, and we are putting in a green buffer. The distances of these green buffers are extensive. One of the things that we've been asked is to give sections to show the exact distances between all of these homes. So really, my opinion, there are very few homes that will have any kind of sense of this thing kind of sitting on top of them. Certainly, these are great distances. People who live there must know that this is a hillside, was once a toboggan area. So when you look at some of these sites, you can see the contours. The distances actually are much greater when you're standing there, because this point is probably at least 30 feet higher than Narragansett, at least 30. And similarly, all that occurs along this edge. And then these distances are terrific. So we've been trying to maintain a green buffer, recognizing that people are always sensitive to adjoining neighbors, as we saw in the last group that was on being discussed just earlier. Happy to take any questions.
Let me start with something. I had the benefit of a pre-screening last week, and during that you agreed to a few more views that you would add. Let me mention them. One was that you show the plan where the vegetation layer was removed, so that we could see the retaining walls better.
Right. Let me go to that. This is the one. So let me show it in an aerial first, where the concern. So the concern was, I think, Gareth, we were concerned about this pinch point. Most of all of these other buildings sit a fair distance. This was a pinch point, and we're going to look at trying to move some of these units away from this corner. Maybe put one here, maybe put one down here. And you had asked for us to show this whole edge as if it were a winter scene with no leaves. Is that correct?
So that was the second one. So one might have all the vegetation in that layer just removed. So we have the structure only. And then in a second, and a variety of views in that condition. And then a second additional set where the vegetation is newly planted, because what you're showing here is mature vegetation. So the first set of no vegetation is so that we can really see the structures. And the second view with the newly planted vegetation is to get a sense of what it'll look like in year one, and then the more mature. So if you can show those, and it's easy to do. You can tell your guy. It's just a matter
Yeah.
first. Yeah.
I've already talked to them, and it's not a problem.
Okay, great. And then you had mentioned wanting, and I thought it was a good idea, to show a couple of cross sections, which
Yes.
is doable.
Yes.
Okay, so with your agreement, the completion will depend on those being part of what is submitted.
Yes, no, that's not a problem. I think it'll be very helpful for you to understand the distances. When you look at something like this in, flat two-dimensional drawing, you don't get a sense of the contours of the property.
So are there comments from the consultants?
So, Glenn, this is still the 98 house development, right?
Yes,
So, being
townhouses.
being that it's you're saying it's a former hospital? It's a
Yes, it's a former psychiatric hospital of several buildings.
Yeah, so is there any site that needs to be remediated as far as brownfield, or nothing's?
Not brownfields. No, there are no brownfields, but there is asbestos in some of the tiles in the floors and some of the wrapping of some of the piping. So the buildings, all of the buildings prior to any kind of demolition, it's just standard operating procedure for us. We go in and we will do whatever needs to be taken out before they're raised. Yeah, that's standard all projects I work with.
Yeah, but I'd be interested to walk it.
No, I would love for you to do that. I think it's important. And if anybody's, neighbors listening on, I'd happy to take them as well.
Sam, you arrange for another walking tour?
I'd do it through Sandy, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Yes, we can do that.
that'd be, thank you. Any comments from the consultants or board members?
As far as the engineering issues, we'll be taking a deep dive into the stormwater. We did that on the previous application, so there's less impervious with this one. So there'll be that review. We already talked about the retaining walls, which we want to, make sure are done properly. The offsite drainage was also reviewed under the prior application, as was the water supply and sewage disposal issues.
Yeah, I want to address one of the things that Dan is bringing up as it pertains to these units here. So we were concerned about trying to avoid retaining walls. So these homes, these on first and second, would not see big retaining walls. So what we ended up doing is lowering these units, and that the back sides of these will be the foundations and not retaining walls. You understand, Dan? We're not going to have separate retaining walls there.
What kind of treatment are you going to be doing on the foundation walls? Will you be doing something to sort of soften it, or is it going to just be exposed concrete?
It'll be stuccoed. It'll be stuccoed. But the images that Gareth is asking for are specific, in particular, for that vantage point right there that he was concerned about.
Yeah, just to clarify, not just that vantage point, but also the one from looking down from the Veterans Park area.
Yes, Narragansett, sure.
Narragansett, because there's an area of wall that.
I have a comment. If you guys can hear me.
Go ahead, Donna.
Yeah, so I definitely thank Valerie for her work and agree with her findings that it's incomplete. But I did want to comment on the references to the comp plan in this, and I know we'll have an opportunity to speak about it when the SDEIS is considered complete, but I did want to just bring this up now. There is a reference that this project is going to be meeting the objective in the comp plan, which the objective to make a wide range of housing opportunities available to the community. That objective, I believe, specifically refers to the lack of more affordable housing. 80% of this project is high-end housing, and there is not a high-end housing crisis in the town of Ossining. So I really think that that is inappropriate to say that it meets that objective. But this project does have the potential to meet the comp plan sustainability objectives by including things that you're not including that I would.
You're frozen again, Donna.
Vehicles, electric charging stations, heat pumps, electric appliances.
Donna, you were frozen for a minute. Could you back up?
Okay,
just-
so
Go ahead.
what I would like, would be great to include is the electric jitney, the electric vehicles, the electric charging stations, heat pumps, electric appliances, electric landscaping equipment, detention basin meadows, not lawns, high wildlife value, habitat value plant species, prohibition of landscape fertilizers and chemical inputs, definitely an invasive plan, plant removal plan, and then not hooking up to gas. I mean, these are objectives of New York State and the town to become sustainable. So you're building something that's really, when you're hooking up to gas, it's really like a 1950 thinking instead of a 2022, and that would be really great if you could go towards sustainability. I feel like you have this great opportunity here to really make a beneficial project to this town, but it would require those kind of additions. So thank
I
you.
want to just address your comp plan comment, Donna. The comp plan is in draft form. So we kind of scratching our heads as to why we should address something that's not been adopted by the town yet. Could still change a lot. So it's separate from that. When you say a wide range of housing options, that's exactly what this is. There is no 55. Why are you smiling? There is no 55 plus housing option in this town. Is there?
So what I'm coming from is that the town with the strong recommendation of the county is now proposing that there's such a housing crisis that they're proposing that some single family home areas, that the homes are going to be removed and replaced with 2 to 4 family homes, because there's such a crisis with a lack of affordable housing. And I believe that the housing opportunities that they're referring to, because I'm on the committee, no one was asking for more options for high-end housing.
This is not just high-end housing, Donna. This is active seniors housing. These are for people seniors who don't want to be in a big home anymore, who don't want to clean their gutters, who don't want to have to take care of the outside. They want more mobility. They may be selling $1 million house and wanting to move down. So from a senior standpoint, from a 55 plus standpoint, this is a new housing option that is not here anywhere in this area. And
Well,
if you look
doesn't
at
meet the needs of our community, and I will definitely.
and we are going to be building 10% affordable for you at a great cost. We lose money on every one of those. Excuse me?
It doesn't meet the needs of our community. Our community, it does not meet the needs of our community.
Well, I don't agree with you one iota.
All right, we'll have plenty of time to talk about this later.
Just because it's not affordable housing doesn't mean it doesn't meet the demands of the marketplace.
I'm saying it doesn't meet the comp plan objective. There's a difference.
The comp plan objective is not to provide affordable housing. And these are going to be less expensive than single-family homes. The single-family home being built across the street is going to be a lot more than these houses.
If I may, though, to get back to at least one of Donna's points, when you had previously proposed the apartment building, one of the things you had talked about was putting in electric charging stations and things like that. And I mean, I just thought that was such a great idea. And really the direction we really need to kind of be going in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, all of that will
just
be.
throwing it out there.
Well, it's one thing to have, yes, we absolutely will have these homes, the garage, each one will have its own 2-car garage.
Okay.
And each one will have the wiring to accommodate if you have an electric vehicle. You won't have to retrofit the house because not everybody's going to have an electric car. Sooner or later we will, probably 10 years from now, every family will have at least one.
We have one.
But to Donna's point of, up until just a few years ago, all of our new projects had gas burners in the kitchen. And now with these new electric ranges that have essentially a cool cooktop, people are actually preferring them because they're safer.
Globally, everything's turning electric. Glenn, is there a plan to infuse sustainable utilities in the development, like solar panels? How do you adapt them? Is that an option?
That whole area is evolving so quickly. You look at what Tesla's doing with these, these roof tiles and these battery storage units.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at all of that. It's every 6 months it changes, so it's so hard to say. I mean, I'm literally, for my own home, I'm looking into a Tesla system because you can get these big battery storage units and save a significant amount of utility cost every month.
So there is no feature yet in this development to adapt solar function.
Well, I guess at the very highest level, everything will be Energy Star, low VOC paints. All of the glazing on the windows will be obviously, light filtering. We haven't spec'd the HVAC systems yet. I personally like all those advanced technologies, whether it be systems that turn off lighting and whatever, but once again, it's just changing so rapidly, Manny. To spec something today, a year from now, we would probably spec something else. So I don't know the full answer to that right now.
Are there any other comments from the board or consultants? I was going to ask about solar also, so thank you, Manny, you beat me to that. Regarding the gas question, Glenn, are you saying that you could forego connecting to a main gas line?
Well, the whole issue with Con Ed, we did get in before the moratorium, which was, I don't know, I lose track, 2.5 years ago. And the cost of energy has risen so precipitously since the war and such. So if we can go to just all electric, we will. My preference would be that way. It certainly costs a lot less to have to put in a gas piping into these units if I don't have to. it's a huge savings. But, you know, what the market will demand, it's, again, the cost of energy is changing so quickly. All of us know and look at our Con Ed bills, how much they've risen in the last couple of months.
Fossil fuels will continue to go up as they become more and more scarce as well. And there may additionally be, you know, fossil fuel, carbon dioxide taxes and so forth. So yeah, sort of, I would think electricity is the future. So if you can consider, you know, not connecting to gas, that would be considered a sustainable, you know, plus.
I hear you. You know, and to that point, this site is really ideally suited for solar panels because of the fact that it sits up on a hill like that.
Yeah.
So to the extent that we can have solar panels, we will.
Could that be offered as an option to the purchasers?
It could. Okay.
And just to clarify for anyone listening, these are currently slated to be structured as condominiums. Then
They are, yes.
right. Okay. So that will
Yeah,
be
it's not practical to do subdivisions here.
okay. If there are no further comments from the board or consultants, Valerie, why don't you take us out on this? Can you summarize what needs to be done? I mean, I guess it's just what you pointed out earlier, and then the comments from you know, regarding the 3D, and what else, and any changes to make this application or this DEIS complete.
Right, so they just have to finish addressing the outstanding comments. They can submit a revised DEIS. We'll review it, and at that point, if it's, you know, deemed complete, we can open it up for schedule a public hearing on the SDEIS. At that point, we will do a substantive review on the SDEIS, and we'll work with the planning board to identify questions and comments on the actual projects itself. Very similar to some of the questions you raised today, those could potentially get incorporated into the SDEIS for the applicant to respond to in the FEIS stage.
Okay.
I think in terms of tonight, Kathy, I can't recall, did we have the board vote last time on the
Yes,
acceptance?
and that's what I was going to recommend again, that the board vote and find that that it's not, the SDIS is not complete.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to that effect? Caroline, how do you vote?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Men?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So thank you very much, Glenn. I think we're getting close.
Okay, and I will reach out to Sandy to give Manny and the other gentleman, Jason, and any you know, neighbor that's listening in that wants to, you know, just call Sandy, and we're happy to take her out on the site.
Great. And tell me if I'm wrong, Valerie, but I think that these materials and the DEIS will become publicly available only after we have accepted it as complete.
Right, so I believe I don't know what the town ended up posting. There are some documents posted onto the website, but the official SDEIS for public review and comment will take place after you deem it complete.
Okay. I just wanted the public to hear that so they knew when to expect that availability.
Yes.
I think with that, that concludes this application. So thank you, Glenn. And
we can also post this on the website if you'd like. The town's website. Do you want?
I don't see any downside to that. Valerie, would that be okay?
You know, please send it to Sandy and we can post this.
Great.
Okay. Happy to do that.
Okay, next on the agenda for tonight is a field change from the learning experience at 530 North State Road. Is the applicant here?
I am. I'm Richard Jarmel. How are you?
Good. Thank you for coming tonight. Would you like to describe the field change?
Sure. I actually have a drawing if I can share my screen.
Please do.
Okay, so what this messy drawing shows is what was supposed to be constructed overlaid with what's there and what we're proposing to do. So what was supposed to be constructed is this curb line was supposed to be out here. In actuality, they built it back here. And the reason they did that is this utility pole that Con Ed and Verizon was supposed to remove for us 2 years ago, they finally removed 3 weeks ago. So we needed an opening to get in and out of the parking area while the building was under construction. So what we'd like to do, and I went over this in the field with Dan, is stripe out this area, leave the pavement in place, and then move, put the island where it's supposed to be with the striping. That's really the whole crux of the situation.
So the island with the shown with the stripes, that's moved over from where it was originally going to go. Is that right?
Right now, it's right here. It's a striped island. It was supposed to go here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So what we want to do is move back this. This curb line is in the right place. We want to stripe back where it was supposed to. And instead of paving this purple stripe area and rebuilding the curb, we want to just do it with striping on the pavement.
Okay. And does that complete the description of the change?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any comments from the consultants on this? Dan?
I met with the applicant out there. You sort of got the story of how we ended up deviating from the plan. So it seems like we really just have two choices. But the one choice would be to just comply with the original plan and the applicant's here, because if we were to go with the striping plan, that would require the approval of the board for that modification.
Any other thoughts, any other comments from the board or the consultants?
Can I just ask how that impacts the planting plan? Because you were going to go, there is a tree there, right? Like
No, it just decreases some grass area.
Right, so it doesn't impact the tree. That's already there, correct?
No trees are impacted.
Dan, could you restate for me? I was distracted for a second while you were. I'm sorry.
It does not affect the plantings. It just reduces the grass area slightly.
No, I'm sorry. I was asking Dan to repeat comments because I was distracted speaking.
As was described by the engineer, the utility pole created an issue, and actually there were some other issues they were actually hoping to be ready to open, I think almost a year ago. But as things worked out, that utility pole finally was removed. So the curbing you have there right now is a result of them trying to work around this utility relocation delay. So now that it's been complete, curbing is in, and we could leave it. I mean, I think there's three scenarios. You could leave it the way it is, but I think leaving it the way it is somewhat dangerous, because then, sometimes less is more when it comes to people being confused pulling out of parking lots. So you really want to sort of channelize those movements. So the striping would do that. Alternatively, they could go back to the original plan and just take out that blacktop, put in the curbing where it was supposed to be. So if they followed that plan, then obviously we wouldn't be here tonight. So the applicant would like to try and leave things the way they are. And leaving the way they are would be to just not do any striping, or I should say just do the striping of the arrows and so forth. But, this striping would allow, basically the other thing that it does is these days, it's sort of not a bad idea to have wide openings just because of, delivery vehicles trying to maneuver through parking lots. So they, riding over curbs obviously beats them up, but riding over paint is not an issue. So from my perspective, I'm really not opposed to this sort of painting to correct the or to compensate for where the parking lot is today.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other comments? Consultants or board members?
So I'm worried how that's going to look. I mean, it looks like it's 12 foot is the entranceway there, and then is it another? That's it's going to be 12 foot of striping.
It's about 11 feet of striping. And we can adjust that. When Dan and I were in the field, we talked about 3 feet of striping. So that this, oops, I was pointing with my finger, that doesn't work. This portion could get cut back, so it's only 3 feet of striping and the lane width becomes wider. It would go to about 20 feet wide at that point, the pavement.
But wouldn't that cause the problem of confusion that Dan was talking about? You lose that.
Well, you're still channelizing them with the striping. I prefer to keep it wider. And 12 feet is more than enough room for the vehicles to get through and maneuver.
It just seems too wide for me. I mean, that's what it seems like to me. Visually, I think it's not going to make sense. I understand maybe having a little bit of striping so that you, like what Dan says for the delivery trucks, they're not going over the curb.
Yeah, we could split the difference. We could, take out, add 6 feet back into the pavement side and leave 6 feet striped out kind of thing. It's really,
that would be like more attractive than having like such a large amount of striping. But
yeah, I think from a engineering traffic movement point, that still works fine.
I kind of like that idea. Other comments from board members?
Is the island physical or is that just striping?
No, it's striping. It's currently striped right here, and it was supposed to be striped here.
Okay.
what happens in the wintertime when there's, I mean, if it's just striped on the pavement, is that an issue? This is like school buses and stuff, right?
There are no school buses. It's parents dropping off kids, but I'm not clear on the question. You mean, how do you see it?
I just don't know. I'm not saying it's bad or good. I just don't know.
Well, when they plow the driveway, it will be seen again. I'm not sure what the question was though. Was that the concern that you don't see the striping?
Yes, that's was my question.
Once they plow the driveway, it's seen again.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And Dan, you're comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with this configuration.
So any other thought?
I would tend to go as drawn.
So we tend to go, I like the idea of reducing that striping a little bit, like Donna and Mr. Jarman were talking about. Dan, would you have a preference between those two options? The splitting the difference option or leaving it as shown with the striping in purple?
think the way they have it shown now, kind of consistent what was originally approved, and as I say, it allows you a little more maneuverability for single unit trucks pulling in here, making deliveries.
Okay,
Let me just ask the question, isn't that the outward? That's not the inward. That's the outgoing,
That is outgoing.
right? I don't understand why it would have to be twice the width, because they're gonna have the same trouble coming in, and we're not making that wider. So, I mean, a little wider, I think was fine.
Well, the truck can maneuver within that 12-foot and that turning radius to come in. And they can do the same thing coming out.
Right. So
We
you don't need
could,
an extra 12 feet or
yeah,
11
we
feet.
could,
If a truck's coming in, they're gonna drive over the paint. They're never gonna,
right,
they're not gonna
they
hesitate. to
can drive over this, it's just striping.
Right.
Just like
Oh.
they'll drive over this part, it's just striped if they want.
Right.
They don't even hesitate to drive over the curbs, so
This is
they
true.
won't stop them.
if we're ready, we could entertain a vote on this. Does anybody want to suggest that or motion?
What are we voting on? Are we voting on
Yeah.
making it less or the same?
I think we were going to vote on the same, but if it didn't pass, then we could talk about the alternative. How would that sound?
What are we voting on?
So the way the purple striping is shown right now, which would be to have the striped island and to have the striped shape over on the left-hand side of the full size as shown, not the immediate that you mentioned.
All right, well, I would vote against that.
All right, so why don't we take a vote? Is anyone else ready to vote?
Yeah.
Do I hear someone make
As drawn?
as drawn?
Just wrong. Okay, are you making the motion, Jim? Then I'll second.
Sure, I'll make the motion.
Second.
Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Donna?
No.
Manny? You vote on-
Yes for me.
and it's a yes. Yeah. So the motion carries.
So we're gonna, just as we're shown on the plan, I'll have them stripe it out and build it, correct?
I think so.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah.
So the next item on the agenda is Terra Rustica field change. Is the applicant here?
Ludovic St. Pierce.
Yes, hello, Linda Messi. Would you like to describe the field change that you'd like us to consider?
I do have old drawings that I can share.
And you have renderings as well that I think would be useful to see.
Did that come up or not?
Not yet.
All right, do you see the old drawing now?
It's coming up.
Lower the glasses then.
There we go.
So, everything's going well. We've got this approval about last year or so. They're in the middle of building. The only thing that we'd like to change is this area here. We're looking to extend it about another 8 feet. The current deck does go that distance, and we'd like to just carry over that part of the roof just to be a little bit longer.
and it's about 8 feet. It's another, parking space basically. So that was the idea, is just to make that a little bit longer, about 8 feet or so.
Just the roof.
Just the roof, yeah, the deck is already there. And that's just a little bit easeability to get to the parking lot from the back and have a little bit of a cover.
Comments from, is that it, Lou?
Yes.
Okay, comments from the consultants on this?
I have no issue with it.
Yeah, we have no issue.
Comments from the board?
A question, you have egress on both ends of the deck, right?
That's correct, yeah. We have it from this side and the other side, correct.
So I actually like the extended roof. I think that would be a nice change.
Thank you, Don.
You're welcome. So, that would, just so I understand it, you have a stairway or something over there that goes?
No, it actually connects to the back, the parking lot that's back there.
Oh, that's
back
upper,
there. Yeah.
right, so it's the same level, right?
Yeah, so the
Yeah,
deck
that would be
always,
good.
yeah, the deck always extended that way. We never thought about covering it. And the owner just asked me if we could possibly do that. And John Hamilton said the best thing to do is come back to the planning board to get that as a change.
That seems to make sense.
Good.
I agree with Donna.
Thanks, Jim.
Why?
Let me ask you, Lou, are you guys gonna take those spotlights out?
Yeah.
That are in the back?
Everything,
Yay,
everything is falling into plan. So that's going to be coming out soon. Yes.
great. It does look good. I gotta say, what you're doing is, as it's coming along, it's looking very nice.
Yeah, the parking area underneath is working out well. The balusters worked out well. Everything's coming along.
Okay, if there are no further questions, someone want to make a motion to approve this field change?
So moved.
Second,
Jim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Donna?
yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Manny?
Yes.
Yes as well. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, have a good night.
You too. Good night.
We should have really had him come first.
Oh, that would have been nice.
Sorry about that.
No, but
Or if we really want to torture him.
No, but I actually enjoyed the river knoll. I thought that was it's an improvement, that project. I thought that was a better solution. But I'm just still curious about how tall that those buildings are gonna be. Be nice to do a site walk. I might call Sandy and tell her to put me on that list.
Yeah.
I'll take you.
If we want to torture Lou, we can actually ask for some more screening.
Yeah. On the deck.
On the deck, yes, sure. Thanks a lot, guys. Good night.
Take care.
Night.
So that brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there anything else? Anything else, Sandy or Valerie? No? Okay.
Nope.
Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So I just have one question. Do we always end this late
I
in all our
hope
meetings?
not. It would be good to address that.
No.
Okay.
Did
I
we?
just want to make sure what I signed up for.
Yeah, but maybe we could come up with a plan. Like, is there any way to make the meeting start earlier if you're gonna have like 6 things on the agenda?
I
we do
think
that?
I know you might not want to hear this again, but I think part of that is the comments from the public. I think
Yeah,
it probably needs to be a little bit more streamlined. And I think you would have been able to potentially have captured all their concerns, but there was a lot of repetitiveness in the comments going back and forth on that 68 Somerstown Road. So I think that's really where things kind of got hung up. Everything else was running at about a half an hour.
So I have one question regarding the screening. So
I really feel that it's useful to let people, let people go a little bit. And even the talk. I know you don't like that, Valerie, but I think it's okay.
Well, we let it get away from the ARB discussion and
Right.
it totally went back to site plan approval.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I think just, that one took almost 2 hours. That's
Right.
all I'm saying,
Yeah.
right? So you could probably cut off like that's all. Like, so when you're asking why it took so long, I mean, that particular application took 2 hours to discuss.
So regarding the screenings, I have one question. I mean, so they've been living in a certain area for so many years, and there's this vacant lot, and suddenly the homeowner, the lot owner wants to build. So my question is, why will the onus of the screening be on the new tenant as opposed to the existing one to build?
I think this might be better as an executive session discussion. It's within the purview
Yeah, okay,
of the
it's a
board.
long night,
to-
so
Yeah.
Another
Talk about landscaping, but I don't know if landscaping means completely screening. So if to get
Well,
more in depth on
Mandy-
that, we should go into executive session. If you
Mandy
would.
should be careful to be accused of not giving a crap.
So, yeah, so just let me know when.
We're still
the walkthrough
recording,
is scheduled for River Nola, Sandy.
Are we gonna call it a night?
Night.
I think so.
Please.
Do I hear?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And I will gladly second.
Jim, how do you vote?
Yes, please.
Manny,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes, my dog says yes too. He's here whining at me.
got to vote. Donna,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So thank you all. It was a very long meeting. Don't worry, Manny. Don't worry, Jason. They are rarely this long.
Gareth, why don't you just tell Manny it was like a hazing to make sure he really wanted to be there.
Excellent. All right.
Bye.
Okay, good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.